Okay, Mr. Shelton, if we could have an outline of the addendum agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the for the addendum, we do have a number of items that came out as part of the addendum on Thursday past. So there are a couple of changes to the addendum. So the first item, number 1, which relates to a presentation on Smart Commute, we will have Deborah Scott of the Chamber make an address rather than Pat Lusink. And there will also be a photo opportunity as there's a presentation as part of that PowerPoint presentation. On item 2, we have it noted that Paul Ferguson of Newmarket Tay Power will do a presentation. Paul will be here to answer any questions on his report rather than make a presentation. The next item is 18A, was circulated with the addendum, and that is a Recreation and Culture Report 2015-03 regarding artificial turf soccer field opportunity. And 18B relates to a deputation request from Mr. Dave Hansen relative to that report. Item 20A is a PowerPoint presentation by the Director of Financial Services regarding the 2015 preliminary draft budget. And 20B is the Corporate Services Report, which deals with all of the decision packages related to the draft budget for 2015. And item 24 is Development and Infrastructure Services Report that was circulated with the addendum, and it relates to a draft plan of subdivision for condominium, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment near the Metrolinx rail corridor at the end of, I believe, Silk and Lauman. And under the closed session, we do have 2 items identified. The first one is only, it's there as a placeholder. We would have that only if council feels that it is necessary, and it does relate to item 24, the development that I indicated. Item 2, we were going to give you a verbal report regarding a property matter. That we will defer to a future meeting on property. So are there any questions on the addendum or any of the amendments that I've set out? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members of committee, I'll call this committee the whole meeting to order. You have your agenda before you. Our CAO has outlined the addendum and the corrections. Could I have a motion, please, to include the addenda items on the agenda? Councillor Sponga, Councillor Kerwin, all those in favor? And that is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Being none, no pecuniary interest declared, then we'll go forward to our presentations. Our first presentation is from Deborah Scott on behalf of the Newmarket Chamber and Smart Commute Central York. Ms. Scott. As you know, we permit up to 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mayor Van Buyden.
If you could press the little red button there, that helps us in the streaming. Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor Van Buyden and councillors. My name's Deborah Scott, and I'm the President and CEO of the Newmarket Chamber of Commerce. And I'm here today to present an annual report for the Smart Commute Central York, which is a program of Metrolinx, and it's run out of the Newmarket Chamber of Commerce. Smart Commute Central York is one of 13 Smart Commute offices across the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. We're a transportation management association which promotes sustainable commuting to organizations in order to reduce traffic congestion. The service area is identified by the purple area on the map. We are funded by York Region, the town of Newmarket, in addition to Metrolinx. Currently, we work with 33 businesses who deliver smart commute programs to their employees, which collectively number more than 31,000 employees. The majority of these are located within the town of Newmarket. Sorry, the mouse isn't advancing the slides. Let me try. It looks like it's gone down there. Okay, great, thank you. Each year we recognize our Smart Commute businesses for their commitment and achievements through our Workplace Designation Program. In 2014, Smart Commute Central York won an award from Metrolinx for having the most gold and silver designated workplace out of all 13 Smart Commute offices across the Greater Toronto Area and Hamilton. We were excited to announce that the town of Newmarket has attained gold status in 2014. Congratulations. Nope, sorry. Yeah, I did. It wasn't moving. Thank you. Last year, Metrolinx changed the focus of the program away from recruitment and towards deepening the engagement with the current Smart Commute businesses. They recognized that with limited resources, Smart Commute offices could not simply continue to add new businesses, and that the success of the program hinged on enhancing programming to encourage behavior change. With these goals in mind, Smart Commute Central York made a committed effort to strengthening the program. Carpool Week was celebrated in February, during which Smart Commute Central York held 14 outreaches and spoke to over 600 commuters. These efforts resulted in an 82% increase in the number of carpools formed compared to the previous year's campaign. In March, we presented our 6th annual Workplace Champion Workshop with 15 of our businesses attending. The workshop allows participants to network with others and to learn about programming at other workplaces as well as new initiatives. We also offered a workshop designed specifically to support cycling efforts at our Smart Commute workplaces by providing resources for their designated cycling champion. As a result, there are now 5 businesses who have started bicycle user groups, including the town of Newmarket. Bicycle user groups advocate for cycling infrastructure, bike-friendly workplace policies, as well as enjoying group rides, all of which support and encourage bicycle commuting. Our 8th annual Bike to Work Day event was held at the end of May at Riverwalk Commons, and participants were given a shirt, complimentary breakfast, and a chance to win over $2,000 worth of donated draw prizes, and visit with numerous community displays. More than 300 people participated in Bike to Work Day events, and approximately 1,400 kilometers were cycled that day. York Region's inaugural Bike Summit was held in November with more than 150 people attending. Summit attendees were asked to vote on the best bike event, and we are proud to announce that Newmarket's event won that title. The June Bike Challenge was announced at the Bike to Work Day event. It was a new campaign which challenged York Region residents and employees to become more active and use cycling as a mode of transportation in their daily lives. Every day cycled earned the participants one ballot for the grand prize. 60% of the participants said the challenge encouraged them to cycle more. 1,967 one-way commute trips to work or school were logged for a total of over 17,000 kilometers, which is the distance from Toronto to Australia and a bit more. During Smart Commute Week in September, Metrolinx introduced new branding for the Smart Commute program. We launched a new website and a new online tool to replace carpoolzone.ca. The tool is much more robust and interactive and enables users to compare all modes of travel for the trips they want to make. Users can also find a carpool partner, discover the best routes, and track their impacts, including money saved and calories burned. Metrolinx has issued a challenge to all 13 Smart Commute offices to promote the new tool. Smart Commute Central York came in first place for registering the highest number of users during the month of September, far surpassing the office in second place. As a result of our concerted efforts to deepen the program engagement, we have seen many accomplishments. At the Smart Commute Awards in November, York Regional Police received an honourable mention, one of only 3 awarded across the Greater Toronto Area and Hamilton. They are truly dedicated to reducing single-occupant vehicle travel by their staff and have implemented a carpool parking program at their new headquarters and a shuttle service from the GO train station. Also at the Smart Commute Awards, 4 other Smart Commute businesses in our area, 3 of which are located in Newmarket, received special recognition based on statistics gathered from baseline and follow-up travel habit surveys. For example, 44% of Scholastic employees carpool to work, and 35% of Pickering College employees walk to work. Metrolinx also recently produced an in-depth Smart Commute Workplace Program Impact Report. The purpose of the study was to determine the estimated benefit-cost ratio of the Smart Commute program across the network and impact on regional congestion. The results estimated an astonishing 6-to-1 benefit-cost ratio for every dollar invested. The study shows that Smart Commute Workplace program has been responsible for a 2% reduction in drive-alone trips across the GTHA Smart Commute network, with some workplace shifting up to 35% of their drive-alone trips to other modes. This is the equivalent of approximately 40 million less kilometers traveled each year and about 5,000 cars taken off the road each day. The impact report results also show a corresponding increase in carpooling and active transportation uptake. South Lake Regional Health Centre was selected as one of 5 organizations to be showcased in this study. Smart Commute Central York looks forward to another exciting and productive year ahead. This summer, Toronto will host the Pan Am and Para-Pan Am Games. The Ministry of Transportation has a goal to reduce background traffic by 20%. In the coming months, we will be helping businesses to determine the impacts of the Games on their operations and their employees' commute to work in order to help them put plans in place to ensure business continuity. I'd like to thank the town, staff, and council for your ongoing support and commitment to the Smart Commute program. And in particular, I'd like to thank Cindy Wackett, the town's workplace coordinator. I'd also like to thank 2 of my staff that are here today in their green vests. I'd also like to now present the town with their 2015 workplace designation, and congratulations on receiving the gold level for the 2nd year in a row. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's go forward for the presentation then. I'll ask members of council to join me. commute rep over here as well. Here. Here, there we go.
One, two, three.
One, two, three. And one more.
Thank you. Thank you.
I go through that every day.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And also, we want to extend our thanks to Cindy and her hard work in making sure that the municipality has been contributing not only to the Smart Commute effort, but to the town's efforts as well. So we've got to make sure that we hang that certificate up in your office for a while because you've worked hard for it. So this has been a great partnership. Thank you very much, Deborah. And Councillor Broom-Plumley, if you have some comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some comments. I just wanted to thank the Smart Commute team. I've had the opportunity to participate in many events in the past and to as part of the advisory committee, and I'm very impressed so far with the level of engagement and what you've done in such a short period of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And motion to receive the presentation. So presentations are 10 minutes, deputations are 5. So I'm glad you were moved by Councillor Broom-Plumley, Councillor Bazance. All those in favor? Great. As I said, Deborah, it's been a great partnership, Chamber of Commerce and the municipality, and not without good, strong leadership on the Chamber's part, and you should be proud of what you've been able to accomplish as a Chamber and as a Smart Commute organization. You've made Newmarket a great place to be, and people across the GTAH understand that as well as a result of your great efforts. So thank you very much for what you've done. Thank you. Our next presentation then is Mr. Peter Stirrup. Peter? So to clarify, presentations, you're entitled up to 10 minutes.
I just added mine from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. Well, Well, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and Town of Newmarket staff, good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me here today. I'm honored to be able to speak and to tell you about some of our ambitious and exciting plans that I believe continue to position Pickering College as an innovative, leading-edge institution that both lights the way in education as well as in Newmarket. You know, I like to introduce Pickering College because although it's older than Canada, founded in 1842, and one of the oldest institutions in Newmarket since 1909. Still find that whenever I tell someone where I work, they are very confused. And that's probably because we're neither a college nor are we in Pickering. And to most people, we are an extremely cold arena with that big red brick building with the white columns attached to it. In fact, we're a co-educational, kindergarten to grade 12, independent school of 400 students with 100 boarding students from almost 30 countries around the world. With revenues of almost $15 million annually, we employ 120 faculty and staff. Before I get into the details of the things that we're doing at Pickering College, I'd like you to consider this perspective. Imagine if someone were to travel in time from 200 years ago to today. Imagine what they'd think of some of the changes to our way of life. Imagine them sitting in an airplane. It would be a totally new, unbelievable experience for them. Or if they were to find themselves in a movie theater, it would be inexplicable. Or imagine sitting down in front of a computer connected to the internet and wonder at the amazement that would result. But imagine if you put them in a typical classroom of today, I think they could look around and say, yeah, I get this. It's pretty much the same as what I remember. So my belief and my concern is that most schools today are preparing for the 21st century by toiling under a culture of education that was designed in the 19th century while using 20th century techniques to teach. Despite the investment of billions of dollars and the introduction of massive amounts of technology, the dominant approach to education continues to be one of compliance, standardization, of testing, and ranking. And my assertion is that we can no longer be relying on the industrial model of education, processing students through as if on a conveyor belt through elementary, secondary, and post-secondary until they effortlessly find themselves happily ensconced in a job and career. The Pickering College answer to that is a program we've begun at Pickering that we believe is a revolution in teaching and learning. It's called the Global Leadership Program. This is a program where students learn to become agents of courageous, ethical, and positive change true to Quaker values. I love that statement. Who wouldn't want to become an agent of courageous, ethical, and positive change? And what parent wouldn't want to have their child become an agent of courageous, ethical, and positive change? Rather than educating young people to be employees, we need to be educating them to be able to look at the crazy, confusing, challenging world that confronts them and to know how to be innovative, to be entrepreneurial, to be global citizens, to be able to be creative enough to come up with bold new ideas, to have the skills to execute that idea through to completion, to have the courage to take risks and to fail again, but rise up undaunted, to know that rather than waiting for a job to appear, that they must go out and create the jobs. This transformational approach to education is a place where learning will be different. Learner-driven, project-based, experiential, driven by digital citizenship and media literacy, and interdisciplinary. It will be engaging, inspiring, and empowering. Now that may sound wildly ambitious, but already we're generating strong positive endorsements from educators around North America. But that's not all. Our second step is to increase our enrollment from the current 400 students to just under 500 students. This will allow us to retain what is the essential essence of the school, a small, unique sense of community where everyone knows and cares about each other, and teachers know individual students' learning styles and needs. Expanding our student population will not only respond to the anticipated growth of York Region, but also allow the school to offer a greater diversity of academic programs, stronger co-curriculars, and generate more revenues for our plans. But where will all of this take place, you say? Well, that brings us to perhaps the most exciting and ambitious component of our plans, our $50 million campus master plan. In order to deliver the Global Leadership Program in the manner that it's intended to be delivered, to the number of students we want to teach, our learning spaces need to change. We want to teach 21st century skills such as collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communications, skills that are essential to the Global Leadership Program, but also essential to successful careers. So our plans will focus on a state-of-the-art educational design, sustainability, accessibility, Quaker building principles, and great opportunities for use by our local community. This will include a new 600-seat theater, a new 90,000 square foot Center for Creativity and Innovation, and renovations to virtually all of our current buildings. Our work is already underway. This spring and summer, subject to final approvals, we'll be redesigning our front entrance and driveway to make it safer for our students and more efficient for traffic and parking. We'll also begin expansion to our dining hall, increasing capacity by 100, adding air conditioning and improving the lighting and acoustics. This will make the dining hall more comfortable and able to accommodate not only our school needs, but also more use by the community for private and community functions, such as the New Market celebrates the Arts Gala. We also anticipate building a new heads house on campus so that the current house can be used for other program needs as the renovations take place. Design work is already well underway for the Center for Creativity and Innovation, and pending funding, it is our hope that we will have this underway, construction underway in 2016 with a target completion date of September 2017. Finally, both of our girls' and boys' residences will be completely renovated, making them more comfortable, private, and accessible for our students, but also more appealing to groups who may wish to use the facilities in the summer. So you might be wondering, $50 million, how are we going to pay for all of that? Well, that's an excellent question, one that we've been working on for quite some time. We really see three parts to solving this. The first is our Light the Way capital campaign, which is already underway, seeking philanthropic support from our alumni, parents, staff, and key friends. But we're not a large enough organization with enough capacity to raise the entire $50 million through donations. So we'll also be looking at transformational partnerships. We're already in discussions with our bank with respect to financing options, which, while providing strong support, will not quite meet our target. So we're looking at other partnerships that can assist us in supporting both our programs and our capital needs. Already we're in discussions with Venture Lab, the Monk Centre for Global Affairs at the University of Toronto, the YMCA of the Greater Toronto Area, and the town of Newmarket. In conclusion, I'd like to express my thanks to you for letting me share briefly our plans with you today. As you can tell, we believe very passionately in the work that we're doing. We believe that we're creating the type of young people, entrepreneurial, innovative, creative, open-minded, and resilient, who will be contributing to our economy locally as well as globally, and that will benefit all of us as our economy grows. We also believe that our plans fit perfectly with the town's plans and priorities, and that we will continue to be a solid community member and contributor. Pickering College is already recognized around the world as a leader in education, and we will continue to bring international recognition to this great community as we move forward. Finally, as we always have in the past, we look forward to making our many new facilities available to the town and other community groups to support the work this community is doing. But we will need your support. We'll need your approvals. And we'll look forward to having more discussions about the potential for partnerships between the school and the town in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Questions of clarification? Councillor Kerwin.
Yes, Peter Stirrup, headmaster. Publicly, I wish to thank you for keeping me in the loop. Peter and I have had several meetings, either at my home or at the college. And I have said before, I look forward to working with you, and sooner or later we will have not just a ward meeting, but I believe it should involve all the residents of Newmarket, because some of your students will come from the town of Newmarket, which is approaching the $100,000 or 100,000 people mark. So whenever you're ready, give me a call, and we'll plan a ward meeting, but we'll open it up to all residents of the town of Newmarket. And good luck this summer in the enhancement in front of your place and into the project, and thanks for the presentation to council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Peter, it's worked very well for us as far as the Gala for the Arts. It's been a prestige place for us to hold that. But I also want to thank you for your contribution to the disbursement committee, as well as the many items that we've had discussions as far as economic development. I know that Pickering College brings the Newmarket name worldwide, and this looks like an opportunity to do more so. And we're very proud of that opportunity, and we're always very eager to seek out partnerships that are helpful for the community as well as business members within the community. So I'm looking forward to some further discussions, and I'm really excited about the plans, and can't wait to just cut the ribbons there. I'm sure you're excited to do that as well. So thank you very much. It's been very informative, and we appreciate you letting us know what your plans are. It helps us in some of our forward planning as well. So
Thank you.
This has been very good. Can I have a motion to receive this presentation? Councillor Kerwin, Councillor Vague, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, Peter. Okay, before we go into the deputations, let me ask, the agenda does provide for some budget discussions. Is there anyone here that wanted to make a presentation relative to our budget, our preliminary draft budget. Because if that was the case, we do our budget presentation first, okay? All right, then. Items that we would like to deal with, consent items that people would like to deal with separately. Councillor Bay.
Actually, no, I think I made an error here. The item on the turf, that's not part of the artificial turf, that's not part of the consent, that's an action item.
It is a consent item. I was going to pull it, but go ahead, we'll do that. And I was going to do that because we also have a deputation request from Mr. Hanson, so we'll deal with that on that basis. Councillor Sponga?
Item 14.
Item 14. Could you tell me what that is? Because I've got
That's,
a cross.
okay, from the E-agenda, that's the item pertaining to the
Water Street Crossing, great. I'm glad you raised that one. We're going to deal with the budget separately, so the
That's enough.
budget report, which is item 20B in the printed agenda, to item 27. 20A and B, that's right, okay. On the printed agenda, we'll deal with those separately.
Mr. Mayor,
How are we keeping track?
is, our items 26, 27 action items, or
They can be consent items. Item 24 has been pulled. Item 25 has been pulled. Item 26 and 27 will also be pulled.
will be pulled?
They are pulled.
They are pulled. Okay, thank you.
And item number 28 is the OMB report. Okay, any other items? Let me just check my list as well, because here we are. I'm confused. The BIA report, and that's item number 8 on the E agenda. Item number 12 has been pulled. Item number 24 has been pulled. Item number 14 has been pulled. Okay. Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Acting Commissioner? No? Okay, good. Can I have a motion then to adopt all of the other items? So that's adopt all the consent items with the exception of, and I'm working from the E agenda, with the exceptions of item 8, 12, 14, 24, 25, 26, and 27. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? I pulled item number 8. Yeah. Can I have a motion to that effect? So moved. Councillor Kerwin, seconded by Councillor Broom-Plumley. All those in favor? And that is carried. So, Mr. Ferguson, I think that adopts your item under consent. And that also, since item number 28, there was a provision for a closed session agenda item. It was no longer, and that's no longer required since we've adopted that. So there will not be a closed session meeting this afternoon then. Okay, so let us first start then with, let's start with the one that we have a deputation for, and that's item number 24 and 25. On your printed agenda, that is items number 18A and B. So I'll call on Mr. Hanson to come forward, and he wishes to address council with respect to the artificial turf.
Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this matter today as you prepare to hear from staff on the artificial turf field partnership. The need for a turf field for Newmarket's users groups has been well documented over many years now. The less than flattering comparison with other municipalities who have at least one such field is well known in our community and also throughout the various regional and provincial sports organisations. So rather than rehash all of the studies and research, which I'm sure you'll be updated on, I thought it might be helpful to share some recent info with Council. First of all, in fall 2013, Newmarket Soccer Club's indoor centre opened for use in the community. The state-of-the-art low-maintenance turf field provided many varied user groups the opportunity to provide additional playing and development time for their participants. Beyond soccer, this included football, rugby, field hockey, baseball, and ultimate frisbee. My point being, turf fields equals multi-sport capability. My second point, in 2014, the Ontario Soccer Association launched a new high-performance youth development league in which clubs had to meet exacting standards to be allowed entry. 8 clubs in York Region play at this level. Many are smaller clubs or play in smaller municipalities than Newmarket Soccer Club. We will never qualify to participate in this high-performance league until we have direct access to a turf field that allows us to play a schedule that begins in May and ends in November. To conclude this point, Newmarket residents, our members, whose kids can play at this higher level, have no choice but to join a club in one of these other towns. In closing, the turf field and school board partnership to be discussed today really does check all the boxes, in my opinion. Good location, ample parking, sufficient size, cost sharing resulting in savings for the town, no existing field offline during construction, and frankly, it provides a quick, long-awaited delivery of a major asset for our community. I believe Newmarket Soccer Club will be one of many town user groups prepared to rent the facility when it opens. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or clarification? My question, Dave, is will that have any impact with respect to the bubble that you've just constructed? Would that have any? Would that take away from the revenues that would be?
Well, it's an indoor facility, not a dome, as started out to be. Yes, it may affect us slightly in the shoulder seasons in terms of when people would look to rent the indoor facility during the months of April or early May before the town fields come online. But the portion of revenue derived by the club in that period is at lower rates because of the time and much less usage than planned. So it's not significant. It's not anything we would worry about in our official plans. So.
Okay, that would be a concern of mine. You just
that's a good point,
turn the
Mr.
corner,
Mayor.
and the last thing we'd need is to put up a barrier for you as well.
Right.
Okay, so that won't have any significant or material impact on your revenues and your revenue sources.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Sponga, Councillor Vey, all those in favor? Good, that is carried. Now that we have the deputation, let's bring forward item number 24 on the E-agenda, 18A on your written agenda, and that is the recommendations with respect to an artificial turf field. Let me find 24 here. You have the recommendations before you. The recommendations are that council directs staff to enter into formal discussions with York Region District School Board to develop a partnership agreement for the construction and the ongoing operation of an artificial turf soccer field, and that staff report back with the recommended capital and operating framework for discussion and consideration. So this is, Mr. Shelton, the intent is to develop the preliminary understanding and then to bring those discussions back. Could I just
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd ask either the Commissioner or the Director to address that question and also to set out the next steps, assuming that Council approves the recommendations.
Okay, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, that is precisely the intent is really to, this report is really to get the go-ahead from Council to enter into real formal discussions with the school board and to come back with a substantive framework that Council can consider, which will speak to both the capital, cost sharing, as well as the operating on a go-forward basis. The capital, in preliminary discussions, we've been very clear in terms of we have a maximum that we could bring to the table, and the school board is aware of that and is very comfortable with that amount and is certainly interested in proceeding with partnership conversations with us at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we do have the recommendations for you. Could I have a motion with respect to the recommendations? Councillor Kerwin moving the recommendations, seconder, Councillor Sponga. Councillor Kerwin speaking to the recommendations?
I would like to speak to the recommendation. It is a more or less a fact-finding mission, if I'm correct, and we have had many ongoing partnerships with the York Region District School Board. A noticeable one is, of course, our theatre, but many playing fields and throughout the town, and buildings, facilities. As far as I'm concerned, these partnerships are the way to go. It's cost sharing, and that's what we have to do. We're not doing anything new that other nations or other communities haven't done before. And artificial turf is the way to go. It's absolutely low maintenance, and you can start the season earlier. You can start it in May, and you continue it later until November. Therefore, I have no qualms in moving this recommendation. It's a town that's approaching now 100,000 people. Soccer is the fastest growing sport and the largest sport within Newmarket. I think their membership is well over 4,000, and it gives our youngsters and our adults a place to train and to play and to qualify through scholarships in the United States of America, through sports scholarships, because we don't grant any in Canada. So as far as I'm concerned, I've seen it happen with tennis. I've seen it happen with hockey. We get dozens of scholarships, and speed skating and other sports to let our youngsters go on to university where they can afford it because they're on a scholarship. So I have no hesitation in moving it.
Thank you. Councillor Sponga is the seconder.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First, a comment. I think it's important also to understand that perhaps one of our best fields right now that is being used both by a number of actually sports group is also has an alternate use, and that is of a stormwater reservoir. And a lot of our fields, unfortunately, and I'm speaking specifically to the field at the Ray 20. So when you start from an operational standpoint, where you start playing football early in the season or later in the fall, we know what the impact of those fields are. We've also seen the impact of weather and water and rain and so forth, and some of the more drastic weather pattern that we've seen lately on fields, for example, such as Haskett Park, and the type of investments that we have to put in place there in order to address drainage and so forth. So I think it's important that we look at this option of an artificial turf field. My question, though, is through you, Mr. Mayor, either to the Commissioner or to the CAO. A couple of questions related to the budget. First of all, there has been, we know there's a $900,000 that are included in the development charges study. The additional operating budget that is being referred to in the report, would that budget be in place as part of the 2015 budget? Is it provided in our budget report right now, in our draft now? Or are we going to look at that operating budget as our discussions and our discussions with the school board evolve?
Mr. McDougall.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Sponga. Very good question on the operating. What we've dealt with in the 15 budget is really around the capital and the funding envelope related to that, so the DC contributions available. In terms of operating, that would be covered off in the ongoing conversations and culminating in the framework of a go-forward partnership agreement that would be subject to council being comfortable with that. So that would have to occur in the coming months, and then in terms of operating, that would be a conversation that would occur as part of the 2016 budget conversation. So we would need to flesh that out with the school board in advance, and the timing would align nicely with the 2016 operating budget. And
maybe a question I should have led with, are we limited at this point, and I should ask, is the conversation being initiated by the York Region Board of Education, or are we limited in terms of the discussion with the board because there's an interest from the board, or failing to achieve some sort of agreement with the board and moving forward, will we be exploring other partnerships, notwithstanding partnerships that we've heard about today?
Mr. McDougall.
Actually.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd refer this one to the director just to speak through the process to date as well as the process on a go-forward basis.
Mr. Service?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. The school board has approached us, the public school board. They do have artificial turf field presence in most other communities, and they feel it is lacking in Newmarket, and so they are interested in partnering with us. Our discussions have centered around the idea of partnership because conversion of an existing field would not enable use of development charge dollars. It would have to be entirely funded from other means. And so adding a field to our inventory by partnering with another organization is our preferred way to go, whether that's the school board or someone else.
So potentially, if we don't achieve an agreement with the York Region School Board, we would seek other types of partnerships?
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
But that would come back to council.
Absolutely.
This is,
Yeah.
Okay, so first, this is our first consideration. Councillor Vey?
Thank you very much. I've spoken about this before, and I'm going to speak a bit again. We're looking at approximately $1 million for this. And while my kids have played soccer and they've absolutely enjoyed soccer, my son played baseball, had a lot of success with that. I'm not sure for $1 million investment that this is the priority for the town. When we speak to parents, when we speak to families, I'm hearing other things in the recreational area as a priority. In fact, I never heard it come up once last October at the door. Somebody saying, boy, we really need to spend $1 million. We need to spend those dollars on artificial field. So I'm a little bit concerned about going ahead with this, particularly that we have, through our priority setting exercises, identified other priorities, which, looking at this development charge schedule, could easily be accommodated within this. We're not just limited to an artificial turf. That's just one of the many, many things identified in this. We do have our recreation playbook study coming forward. We are continuing with our priorities discussion coming up in a couple of weeks. So I'm worried that we're going to be leading perhaps the Soccer Association and certainly the York Region District School Board perhaps down a false path. I'm looking at the language here, and it says to develop a partnership agreement for the construction and ongoing operation of an artificial turf soccer field, and then you'd be bringing it back to us. I really don't want this council to be in the position of being accused that we've misled the school board. This language here is fairly strong in terms of what we're asking for staff to do, and I'm not convinced that's the right direction to go in using $1 million of our development charges to build amenities in our parks, amenities for our families, amenities for the kids here in the town. It just hasn't been identified as a priority. That doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean it's not something we would like to have, but it certainly has not been identified as a priority by certainly my experience from the families and the kids here in Newmarket. We can identify other priorities if we have those opportunities, things that people have told us that they feel are priorities for our parks. So I do appreciate that we are looking at a cost sharing with the school board, but along with that, we are looking at $1 million of our local taxpayer dollars too, dollars that really, I know it comes from development charges, but those dollars I think we should consider being owned by the taxpayers and the families here. So this language is far too strong for my liking, even though the second part says to bring it back, frame it back for discussion and consideration. Really, I'm not going to vote in favor that we direct staff to enter into formal discussions with the school board to develop a partnership agreement. I think it's a little bit early for that, and once again, it's really not the priority that I've heard out there.
Mr. Service, could we qualify? Is the school board clearly understanding that any discussions are subject to council's approval?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they are understanding of the fact that we would want to bring forward any kind of formal agreement back to council for discussion. I do want to stress, though, that the school board's funding, the way that they work, there isn't an infinite time period that they have to work with in terms of the funding. So this is an opportunity that may or may not exist a year from now, as an example. So it is just something to be aware of in the decision-making process, that they are at the table now and able to commit that funding, but they may not be in the future.
You can find out from them, what that time period is. You're saying it may or may not. That's pretty vague. But I'm just reluctant to go forward with this before we have our recreational playbook, before we continue complete our discussions on the priorities. This takes us down a road that I'm not willing to go that far. Perhaps even if you can hold off on this for 2 or 3 months until we complete those other discussions. And I'm not sure why it needs to be done now, prior to the recreational playbook and prior to council completing its priority process.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's 2 points that I will raise to that. One is that in order to construct something this year, we would lose that window of opportunity. That's why it's being brought forward ahead of the recreation playbook, is to try and capitalize on the opportunity to do construction this year, so something is ready for 2016 or operational in 2016. In terms of the way that their funding mechanism works, they don't necessarily know years in advance because they're subject to the province. And so to get any kind of indication of how long this offer's on the table for is a bit of a challenge.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. McDougall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just also add to that one of the reasons for the timing right now is that it is being carried in the 2015 capital budget considerations. And so in order to move forward on that budget conversation, it's important that we have an understanding from council in terms of direction to at least enter into a conversation more formally with the school board, because we won't be able to complete that in advance of the budget being approved by council as is scheduled for April the 20th.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sponga?
A couple of questions along some of Councillor Vague's thoughts. How would this, if we were to move forward with this project, how would it impact some of the other priorities that members of council may bring to the table in terms of recreation facilities, such as one of the issues that was raised towards the end of last term was to look at and potentially increase the quality of our playground material, playground equipment, the development and exploring of additional splash pads in our municipality. If we were to move ahead with this now at this point, and again, I have another question around the language that is used in the first recommendation, but how would we deal with other priorities that might arise as we move forward with the finalization of our budget and council's priorities for the term?
Mr. McDougall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll maybe introduce it, and the director can step in and add some comments as well. In terms of the DC study, there are a number of very specific things that are identified within, and they do address many of the areas that you referred to. For instance, on the spray pad conversation that's ongoing, there is provision within the approved DCs around at the time what was being considered as potentially a large community-wide spray pad operation. But that can be broken out through the playbook process if it comes out that it's a quadrant-based approach or some other approach that comes out with the culmination of the playbook. There is a funding envelope there that would be available to address that if it were part of either a council priority and or part of what's in the recreation playbook. There are a number of other inclusions within the council-approved DCs. There is the flexibility for some shifting as long as it stays within outdoor recreation, but it also has to address growth within the community as opposed to a retrofit. So that's the other thing that we would have to work through. So perhaps if I've missed anything, the director can add some more comments.
So it's not mutually exclusive, and both the splash pads, which is a major capital commitment in the range of about $1 million, as well as the turfs, are both available for funding under the development charges, right? Which is growth related. Okay.
Sorry,
But
subsequent, two
so
more
it's not mutually exclusive. I
Right,
guess.
it's not
Okay?
mutually exclusive, and so the 900,000 that we're referring to, that is in our DC bylaw now, and we would be able to access those within the 2015 capital year. And so the same goes then for any other capital expenses that would be come out of the recreation playbook.
Mr. Service?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes to the first part of your question, no to the second part of your question. And yes, the funding is there for outdoor recreation for the development of a turf field. The recreation playbook will also consider facilities that don't qualify under development charges. And so those are going to be subject to other kinds of other kinds of funding requirements. And so I can't blanketly say that it's not an either or.
Let's be specific then, a spray pad.
A spray pad there is funding available within the development charges for spray pads as identified in the DC study that was approved in 2014. The one thing to note is that only 90% of the cost of an item, an asset, can be covered through development charges. The other 10% would need to be found within the operating budget. And so in the case of the turf field, that 10% is included within the operating budget, but in the case of a spray pad, it is not. So if we wanted to add a spray pad in 2015's budget, we would need to go back to that operating budget and look at that 10% portion. The remainder could be accessed through development charges.
And
maybe just to clarify that, Mr. Sheldon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we do get to the draft 2015 budget, you'll note under the capital budget listing under deferred items, there's an item that relates to community splash pads, comes out of the DCs. It's 1.5 million with 1.35 million from DCs, the balance from the operating fund, which means either the operating fund or reserve. So that right now is sitting in the deferred list of capital projects. Council could move that forward, subject to maybe getting a report from the treasurer for consideration this year. The approach that has been taken by staff is that the playbook was going to set out the criteria, if you like, for splash pads within the municipality, and then those funds would be moved forward. But that's a discussion you are going to be having at today's meeting relative to the capital budget and the operating budget.
my last question, Mr. Mayor, is the council directs staff to enter into formal discussions. What does that mean? Are we going to, we usually see that council directs staff to enter into negotiations with partners or discussion, but this sort of, as Councilor Vague pointed out, there's some meat to this recommendation, and especially around the word formal. Does that mean that there's going to be that we are basically going to be approving or not a specific language in a specific deal with the Board of Education, or that we have an opportunity to extend those discussions and tweak those discussions, or how's that process going to work?
Mr. Service.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The intention of the recommendation is that we've had some very casual discussions about the possibility in the past in the context of meeting with them about other issues. And so what we're seeking today is the opportunity to formalize that process and say we are at the table serious about this, and we do want to move forward with trying to develop an operating agreement and capital contribution arrangement. That being said, we're very clear that it will come back to council for council's input on that framework and council's ultimate approval on that framework or not moving forward.
Last question, Mr. Mayor, again. The commissioner had referred to the operating budget coming into place in 2016, because that's when the field would be ready and operational. So at that point, we would have to provide for an operating budget. So why are we now providing for $100,000 operating budget within the 2015 capital? within the 2015 budgets right now.
Sorry, that's the capital contribution. That's not an operating.
So that's the 10% that it's missing.
That's exactly.
That's not
the
DC
10%.
fund,
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerwin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. My position, first of all, I'd like to thank our staff and the soccer club for their proactive thinking and moving forward with a partner, the York Region District School Board, with whom I worked for 43 years. I have no conflict of interest now. My money comes from the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund. So it's really proactive thinking to bring in a turf. No different when I supported an Olympic pool rather than an Olympic hockey rink. Secondly, soccer tournaments, like all tournaments, if you have the right playing fields, bring in money to this town. Give you an example, the Silver Stick that we hosted in January. Brought in almost $500,000 in revenue to the town of Newmarket. We have soccer tournaments here, such as the Magna Soccer Tournament, and all kinds of tournaments here. And we lack fields. We don't have the fields right now. Some of them we play on are like dirt patches. I know what kids go through. I back onto one up on Mazo de la Roche. We need a quality soccer pitch. And we are a town growing or close to 100,000 people. And I could ask Mr. Hansen, how many registered kids will there be this year in soccer? Could I ask Mr. Hansen that? Dave, do you know how many we will register in all fields of soccer? Women, girls, boys, men? What's the total?
Last year we registered, just in terms of how their registrations were counted in our soccer district, I think it was about 3,600 registrations. And this year, currently, as of today's numbers, today's update, we're running 10% ahead so far in registration.
So we're close to 4,000. That was the figure I quoted earlier. Over that, right. And we have built an indoor facility, and Dave gave us an update on that. This soccer pitch can be used for other sports. It could be used for rugby. It could be used for train any sport when you've got an artificial turf. Once the artificial turf is, there's lower maintenance. You don't have pesticides. You don't have to cut it. You just have to really maintain it. Okay, so the costs are lower than a grass turf. And as I say, it's town-wide. It's not located in a ward. It's for every kid in this town. The fastest growing sport. So, yes, there's a cost, but it's going to be shared. And I look at our working relationship with the York Region District School Board, with the theater, with the facilities like Maple Leaf and other schools across there where we host our programs and so forth. That's the route we should be going. And there's a slim window here. If you don't take it, you lose it. You never have it. And you continue to play on soccer pitches where we never put in the right top fill and the sod never took. They're really bald soccer patches where kids get hurt. And I think that's what we have to be looking at. Proactive thinking, a growth town, a growth sport, and minimal costs. In 2013, 2014, we spent almost $1 million in legal costs. This ends up with something productive that all our residents can use. Male, female, girls, boys, men, the whole combination. A great sport. One you'll be proud to go and stand and watch your grandkids play or yourself play. And I look at this. This comes back to council. It says that we enter into formal discussions from informal discussions, what Colin outlined. We had tentative talks with them. We always do this. And then it comes back to council, And we have the exact figures for the capital, figures for basically operationals. But what I do know with the York Region School Board, that these mutual relationships work. They have for decades. We started this 30 years ago. I initiated them. And that's why I feel strongly that we should be supporting our staff and an organization that is a volunteer organization that enrolls over 4,100 people across the town, but it could be a moneymaker. You're going to bring these tournaments into town. We're not going to have to turn them away like we did in the past. Just like we have the ice facilities, we bring in all kinds of tournaments. You've got to be looking at other economics for the town. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bazans.
Thank you very much. You know, I think it's a intriguing opportunity, but I have to concur with the concern around making a decision before we've seen the playbook, before we've really had a fulsome discussion about our other strategic priorities, without really understanding the degree to which the field could be used by other organizations, other groups. I mean, you know, I don't know much about the seasons of the other sports, but would there be conflict? I mean, would we have football, lacrosse, and soccer all competing for the same time? I'd like to understand better what the school board's plan is with respect to if we don't do this, are they going to take this offer and go next door to another municipality? I mean, is it sort of a very much a time-limited offer for Newmarket only? To me, I think that the direction that we're being asked to approve, which in my mind sounds like, you know, we've all but signed the check to go ahead with the discussion and, on a firm basis is just a little premature. And so I'm just really concerned about making this kind of decision when there could be some other priorities and opportunities that we haven't had come before council at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Broom-Plumley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Vey and Councillor Bazance. I'm needing a lot more information to make this kind of a decision. We're looking at a budget, and we're looking at potentially eliminating things, and now we're looking at something that we didn't have a lot of knowledge of. Can I just confirm again that the school board approached us with regards to this opportunity? Is that what happened originally?
Mr. Service?
Yes, very informally. Talked about whether or not Newmarket was in a position to think about an artificial turf field.
And how long ago was that?
Probably 8 to 10 months ago.
Okay. And neighboring municipalities that have this type of turf, what are some examples of?
In Markham, there is Bill Crothers High School is a partnership where they have 2 artificial turf fields. That's a partnership between the municipality and the school board. There is one in Aurora with the separate school board at St. Max High School. In Vaughan, I can't tell you the name of the high school, but I know that there's a partnership between the public board and high school, as well as in Richmond Hill there's one.
Okay. And I guess my last question would be, is there time frame, are we able to go back to the school board and see if there is a time frame that we can get through our priorities before we make a decision to go into any formal discussion?
Certainly we can go back and ask the question of timelines that are clutch for them to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sponga, through 10.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Either to the CEO or to staff. In this recommendation, the urgency to enter into the formal discussions and is based on the timeline of the funding that is available for the York Region District School Board. And how urgent is our capital and operating commitment in terms of those discussions?
Mr. McDougall.
I'm trying to separate the fact of starting to have a discussion with the separate school board versus having to make coming short of signing a check.
This is public school board.
Sorry, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there's 2 parts to that. But the one is around the capital budget process that we're going through as a town. There's a window, as council's aware, and on the 13th of April is the final committee of the whole around budget. The 20th of April is the targeted approval date. And there is an item in there for that 10% capital to help support this project. So we were trying to stay within that window from our municipal processes. So that's a window that doesn't quite coincide with the playbook, but it coincides with not losing a whole fiscal year in terms of a budget approval process. And then perhaps the director can speak to the school board and the timing associated with that.
Mr. Service?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. And there's also an additional component that I wanted to emphasize, and that is that if we had the approval to go ahead with those formal discussions, we could conceivably come back with an operating framework before the end of this school year, which would enable construction to happen in 2015. If we wait the 2 to 3 months when the recreation playbook results would come forward, then we wouldn't be able to re-engage the school board until the fall of this year, which means that we would not be able to do construction in 2015. We would be relying on 2016 to do construction, so then you would lose that season and we wouldn't be doing construction in 2015 in partnership with them. So that's part of the urgency of why we're not waiting until the recreation playbook is complete. I think that's probably it.
So, Mr. Mayor, through you to staff, is there an opportunity to amend the recommendations in front of us in such a way that we are able to continue the discussion with the district board? We have just 3 days shy of a month till the target date for budget approval, through Mr. Mayor, and I just wonder if there is an opportunity to continue those discussions with the school board and bring something back. I believe the meeting prior to the approval of the budget, I don't have the schedule in front of me readily, but I believe it, excuse me, first week of April, there's a
committee of the whole?
Yeah, correct.
That could be on the 13th?
The 13th of April. Is there an opportunity to bring something back at that point, a framework, in terms of, without having to make that budgetary commitment at this point?
Mr. Service?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there wouldn't be. The opportunity to develop a fulsome kind of framework, that would involve ongoing discussions. And I don't think realistically we could accomplish that by April 13th. I do want to stress, though, that if council were to approve the budget, that isn't necessarily approving the project to go forward in that partnership. So that budget, and I'm going to look to the treasurer to jump in if I'm saying something incorrect, but we still intend to bring a framework back to council. And so if you approve the budget but didn't approve the framework and didn't like the framework, then the budget could either be deferred or used elsewhere or something along those lines. But I want to stress that this is really just about giving the formal go-ahead to have those discussions to bring back a framework to work with.
Good. Mr. Sheldon?
Mr. Mayor, just listening to the discussion, if council would feel more comfortable with wording that basically authorizes staff to explore the potential for a partnership and the conditions, both from a capital and operating perspective, with the school board and report back to committee, I think we could work with that. The budget process is moving forward where we're looking for approval about mid-April, and we could see some convergence of events. And it is correct what was indicated, that council has in the past, even when they do get to approving the capital budget, they have put hooks, if you like, on certain projects. So this one is not to proceed without coming back. And you can also then even delete it from the program. What it does is prevents you having to come forward with a second capital budget mid-year if you cut it out prematurely. Mm-hmm. So that is an option for you to just have us continue with the discussions and bring something back to council.
Thank you. I know I've got a couple more speakers. I haven't had a chance to speak as well. When we develop our development charges, we go to developers and say, as a result of growth, we're going to need capital dollars to respond to the growth. And part of the way that we're going to respond to this growth is through building an artificial turf field. And that's what we've said to the developers, and we want you to pay 90% of that because we're going to need that because of what you're building. So there's a commitment here for us to build that turf field based on what we see our needs might be. So there's been some financial provisions for that for the developers who have created the growth. There are other projects as well, including some splash pads, that we've also indicated we need these things to be a wholesome community based on the growth that's going to be brought to us as a result of the subdivisions that the developers are building. So we've said we were going to build them. Now we have an opportunity to have a partner for half of that cost, and the terms of that partnership is going to come back to us. And I want us to think not in 6 months, but I want us to think about 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And we now have an opportunity to build something that's going to serve us over the longer term. And at this point, we're getting into some discussions that talks about the terms and the conditions that we have a good partner and to enter into negotiations. So I would support the recommendations here. If we want to change the language where we say explore, I'm okay with that. But I think this is an opportunity that sometimes your opportunities change your priorities because you didn't have that opportunity before you. And I think this is one of those times. And if we think in the context of 5 years, I'm sure that it'll be very clear that we'll need some additional space. So understand the concern. I understand the need for us to be able to validate and make a decision as to whether or not that's warranted. I'm quite sure that we'll find that that is warranted. We may not have an opportunity to be able to wait and execute that agreement this year. So I would support it knowing that it's going to come back to us, and I would support it knowing that within the next 5 years we're going to be saying, well, why didn't we do that? So that's where I stand on it. Councillor Kerwin, Councillor Vagan, Councillor Sponga, and then maybe we can wrap
Just
up.
to wrap it up, Mr. Mayor, why I speak vehemently in favor of this, and you're quite right, you're looking at the future, 5 years, 10 years out. Soccer is a sport that can be played with limited equipment. It can be played with your bare foot. It gives a kid, a person, a girl, an opportunity to play a sport without costing a lot of money. And that's crucial to me. And we hear constantly about youth with diabetes and so forth that are not playing sports or not fit. Artificial turf is a great turf to play on. And you can play it with your bare foot. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on sports equipment. All you need is a ball. That's why cricket is so gaining such sport in Mississauga and so forth. You can play it up against the wall. All you need is a bat and a ball to practice and a person out in the field to catch the ball. I know that because I go to Mississauga all the time because my 2 granddaughters live there. And I like Bob Shelton. And I like a compromise here, you know, that you go into it diplomatically. And Bob is, whenever there is a challenge, he finds a way or an option, particularly when he supports something, not a way out. And I don't want to find a way out on this. Sure, it costs money, but vandalism costs money. Graffiti costs money. This is an opportunity to get our people involved universally across the town in a sport that knows no boundary financially. So I'm proud to move it, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Councillor Vagan, then Councillor Sponga.
Thank you very much. I don't want to set this up as an artificial turf field competing with splash pads and other types of amenities. I think they're both important, and we're talking about priorities, and we're talking about $1 million, though. You know, and by the way, a splash pad, even less equipment than soccer required to participate. One of the things I'm struggling with right now is we're going to hopefully, according to our schedule, land on our budget in about 5 weeks' time. So I'm still struggling with why this is before me now, before we've had that fulsome discussion on other items. And I do recognize the opportunity. I do recognize that there are dollars available. I'm just not feeling as pressed about it. And especially, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Collin, you mentioned that these discussions could start as late as the fall of 2015, so the fall of this year. That just means that the field won't be prepared for next year. The field would be there if discussions were successful and council approved 2016. So I'm not seeing why it's so pressing. And that's kind of how I'm feeling as a councillor, that $1 million item has landed in front of us. It wasn't identified as a priority, though I do recognize the opportunity. But from what I'm hearing also, we're not going to lose this opportunity if we put this discussion off for a few months until we complete our budget discussions, until we complete our council strategic directions. So did I hear you wrong? That because really the only thing you're telling me is that instead of having a field for 2016, you might have the field for 2017.
Mr. McDougall?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the question around how this would appear in the capital budget or how we got here today, it basically, one of the steps in the capital budget development is to go through things like the DC charges and what we have available. So it was approved in the 2014 DC charges around a conversion, or sorry, not a conversion, a construction, of a artificial turf field. So that made it come forward as part of a capital budget consideration because it was indicated as a 2015 item. When Council first, if you recall, Council first saw the capital list and draft, they felt that there were some questions, so we thought we should bring back a report today. And so that's really the purpose of today's report, is to say, is there an interest on the part of Council to have the conversation with the school board so that Council can then go forward and staff can go forward with confidence in terms of the 13th and the 20th in terms of capital budget process. So that's the time frame for today. In terms of when it's constructed, it would depend on, of course, the window and the commitment on the part of the school board, and then also if there is a commitment on the part of the municipality. And whenever that was to come to pass, then if there was a partnership that was there that could go forward, then whatever time frame it took to build it and begin to operate it would be what it would be. So we would move forward on that basis. But we felt there was a window right now that coincides with the DC approved study, as well as a window of time with the school board and a window of time with our capital budget process. So that's the origins of how it got here today.
Okay, but that window doesn't close in the next 6 weeks, so.
We don't know.
Sorry to be so blunt.
Mr. Service?
No, it's not closing within the next 6 weeks. It would delay it, and there is that risk that school board's funding next year may not be able to include it because we would have to be put off into the next school year. So we're subject to the approval process of the next school year. So do I think it's a significant risk? No, it would be delaying it, but the risk does exist.
Thank you. Councillor Sponga.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment. And before I actually make an amendment, I'd like to make a statement or a comment. This turf, it is spelled out as a soccer turf field, artificial turf soccer field, and I think a lot of that has to do with the dimensions of the soccer field and of the field and so forth. But if I ever heard one club that has always been in need of a facility of this nature and is just as successfully growing as a sport in our community as soccer has, it's football. And so I wouldn't want to single out the soccer club as the only club prominent club that would be using this facility. And of course, I'm going to state again the fact that I'm an incredible soccer fan, a great fan of Newmarket soccer. What I would offer as an amendment, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if this would be a friendly amendment, but is that Council directs staff to explore with York Region District School Board a partnership agreement for the construction and ongoing, let me find the reference, operation of an artificial turf soccer field, and that a report come back on April 13th, Committee of the Whole, with information related to the York Region District School Board timing on this item. That might give us an opportunity to start those discussions, but at the same time get a better understanding of what this window means. And, do we have until the fall? Do we not have the fall? Is there an opportunity to engage in those discussions, and whether it falls within the April 20th deadline or whether there has to be a subsequent, what is it called, a supplementary capital budget. But let's at least look at that, and in all fairness, there's we're missing 3 members of council, and I think this discussion should come back. So that's the amendment.
So the amendment is that we...
The council directs staff to explore with York Region District School Board a partnership agreement for the construction and ongoing and operation of an artificial turf field. If you want to call it soccer, that's fine. And that a report come back to the April 13th Committee of the Whole with information related to the timing by York Region District Board on this item.
Good. For the negotiations.
Right. So the negotiations get started.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment and then in response to that. Very good point on the sport, reference to sports field versus soccer field. One of the sports, I should say, we've mentioned football, we mentioned soccer. The other one is field lacrosse. There is a rep field lacrosse program that represents Newmarket in the spring every year. Literally cannot compete in Newmarket. They have to do all of their training and competitions outside Newmarket. They represent Newmarket. So one of the shoulder sports.
Mm-hmm.
So very good point on the sports field versus soccer field. I do believe that we could certainly come back for the 13th with some more information for council as has been outlined.
Just what might be the timelines for negotiations with the school board. So that's okay. So would you see that as a friendly amendment?
I can see that as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Thank you. And I would like then to, on the commissioner's comments, then substitute the word soccer with artificial turf sports field.
Okay, great. Okay, so, and again, I keep coming back to the development charges. When we put this development charges report in, we do say that we need the developers to pay for these additional facilities. And so there's been an outline of that. The opportunity has presented itself a little quicker than we might have liked. It would have been nice if we'd received that next year. But this at least gets us to go forward with the discussions and gives us a better understanding what the timelines might be. So I'll support those amended recommendations myself. So I'll call the questions. All those in favor of the recommendations as amended? Opposed? None opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay. Now, let's start at the beginning. So the first item is number 8, and that is Main Street District Business. Okay. And my note there is at the top of, or at the bottom of page 2 of the 5. It's item number 1, and there's a note there that says, and that an additional accessible parking space be added to Main Street between Botsford and Timothy. What I'd like to do is I'd like to refer that to staff for consideration in their recommendations of what that site might be. So I'd like to approve the minutes, but add and that the request for the accessible parking space be referred to staff. Okay, could I have a motion to that effect, please? Councillor Sponga?
Thank you for catching that.
Okay. And a seconder? Councillor Bintun. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, item number 12, and that's the infrastructure services report. Items referred. So basically, the report is referring 3 items, and that is the Partners in Climate Protection, the Internet voting, and the restructuring of council. Those 3 items would be referred to our strategic priorities discussion, with the balance of the items removed or followed up, and they're in process either through some of the items that we've been working on, for example, the consideration of committees. So Could I have a mover and a seconder with those recommendations? I just wanted to be clear that those 3 items were being referred to the strategic planning sessions. Councillor Sponga, seconded by Councillor Vey. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Item number 14, Water Street Crossing. Okay, the recommendations are before you, Councillor Sponga.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendations that are in front of us. I'll be for a second, and I'll speak.
Okay, is there a seconder for those recommendations? Second. Councillor Kerwin, thank you. Councillor Sponga.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, just in terms of process and how the consultation would move forward, design and so forth, in principle, I had an opportunity to discuss this with the Director of Engineering and some of our staff, and I think having read the report and seen the challenges with Metrolinx and the synchronization of the rail crossing and et cetera, that it might take a little bit longer than we thought before we can get a permanent solution. But having said that, this is a great medium-term solution to the problem, and it's a great problem to have. That means there's a lot of people enjoying both the Riverwalk Commons, Ferry Lake, and the Main Street, and that means that a lot of people are walking or cycling. But I just wondered what the process would be in terms of design. I have some concerns with the design, for example, where the bicycle crossing area is being shown in, I think it's page 4 or 5, the picture. Whether there's an opportunity to still have that crossing aisle or pedestrian island, but try to, at the same time, try to accommodate a left out from Ferry Lake Park, and as well a left out from Doug Duncan Drive. So just through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to the Director, she can provide some input on that.
Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The bicycle crossing area can certainly be accommodated with the island by using a depressed curb area, so that's not an issue. As for the left in, left out, it's a safety matter, and I believe our consultant will probably make a recommendation on that. But just for your information, though, on previous reports that we've received while we were studying this with Metrolinx, Metrolinx's consultant actually recommended that we remove the left in, left out in that area because of how busy it is in terms of vehicular traffic. There's also the issue with the police parking lot area that tends to queue the cars over the tracks on occasion. So it was strongly recommended that we not have left in, left out in those areas. So it's certainly something we can take a look at and see if there's a possibility of doing it safely. And if there is, certainly it will accommodate more people. But if it's a safety issue, we would probably side with the recommendations of the consultant.
To you, Mr. Mayor, thank you to the Director. My biggest area of concern is the fact that the park is enjoyed by many people throughout the whole year. And a lot of people do park into Ferry Lake, but I'd just like to get a better understanding how would, at first glance, it look to me like we're actually people that would like to go from Ferry Lake that are there for an event or whatever it might be, just enjoyment of the park, and want to park closer to the Main Street or attend some of the wonderful establishment on the Main Street here, that they would be forced to out of downtown through a ride out. So I'm not sure whether there's that north-south connectivity there between Doug Duncan and Ferry Lake. So that's kind of the concerns that I have, and then whether the consultation, of course, whether this would go to the BIA and the downtown community for a formal consultation process.
Mr. Mayor, yes, we certainly can do that, and we will certainly include the ward councillor as well in all of those discussions.
And Rachel, is that providing for a north-south connection now, or if you were talking about the bicycle crossing being depressed?
Well, it would be a north-south connection just for bicycles at this time.
Just bicycles, not vehicles?
Right, but we will certainly look into it. I'll take your comments under advisement and share them with our consultant, and we'll keep you informed.
See if we can find a solution.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had the same concerns with respect to the left turns from Water Street onto Doug Duncan and the left turns. It's a very busy area, and I appreciate the safety concerns when it is a busy area, but it could have a huge traffic impact. And I'm wondering if we could consider that the design options would explore reserving the left turn movements while at the same time addressing the safety issues, if that's possible. And if that way it kind of documents that. Would you see that as a friendly amendment, Councillor?
I would, absolutely.
Okay, and who was the seconder? Councillor Kerwin? Is that workable as well for you, Madam Director?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, that's fine.
Okay, good, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up.
Yeah. Yep, that's the budget. Okay, I think we've covered virtually everything with the exception of, oh yeah, we haven't dealt with correspondence. I have a motion with respect to the recommendations on correspondence. I believe the bulk of the correspondence is relative to okay. Yep, good. So these recommendations, I think there's a number of them with respect to the Queen's York Rangers, Apple Days, all fairly straightforward that we've granted in the past. Okay, and did you move those, Councillor Sparga?
I also moved to receive.
Oh, okay, I think we approved those.
No. The correspondence is the correspondence regarding the interchange at 404.
Oh, the other correspondence.
Yeah.
Okay, but, so we dealt with the, okay, sorry, just to clarify, there is one other item that's an action item, and that is the correspondence with respect to the St. John Side Road. That's item number 21. So we actually did deal with the other items by consent, so I'll correct that. Item number 21 is the resolution from the town of Aurora seeking endorsement of an interchange at Highway 404. Staff's recommendation is that the correspondence from the town of Aurora be received and endorsed, and that the ongoing request of the town of Newmarket for a Mulock Drive interchange at 404 be supported.
That was my understanding of it.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Councillor Kerwin. All those in favor? That is carried. Mr. Sheldon, did you want to speak to it before we make up our mind?
Just, Mr. Mayor, what we're looking for is a full interchange. Number one, we have a partial one, but you had also mentioned about the request too for the third lane from where it terminates currently in Aurora north to Green Lane.
Yes.
To support that request.
Yeah. Would you see that as a friendly amendment? Okay. So the intent would be also to include the widening. I'm seeing and hearing a lot of people saying that we're getting a backup at Green Lane and at Davis Drive because of the widening. So that was the intent, and thank you for catching that, Mr. Sheldon. So we're good with that. Why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll. Okay, let's come back a quarter after then. Okay, thank you. That's the consent items correspondence. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just figured if you got that one item done, then you can go right into the budget.
Yeah. And we're
And then we just
good.
have notices of motions, and new business.
Okay, alrighty. The water one? I got the other one. The water one, I have it right here. It was just the water one that I didn't get.
All right, we're there. So this is Good. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order then, and remaining item, which is item number 20, we'll start with a presentation from Mr. Mays relative to the budget.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm going to give an update on the 2015 preliminary draft budget and make some suggestions for consideration. First of all, where we're at. On February 23rd, we presented the preliminary draft budget. At that time, two options were given to either go forward with the 2.2 base tax increase before infrastructure levy or 2.5 before infrastructure levy. The direction given was to go with the 2.5, which including the 1% infrastructure levy would be a 3.5% tax increase. The slide you're seeing is a recap where we were at that point. So the base budget, including growth-related items to maintain the level of service, was a 2.2% tax increase. A provision of 0.3%, which represents $153,000, was put in for enhancement items, and 1% at that time was tentatively put in for the infrastructure levy, which represents $505,000, being an increase of 3.5%. At that time, the library board had made a recommendation on their budget, and since that meeting, JCC has met and made a recommendation that fits within the numbers that we're showing here. That should be going to Aurora Council for comment and then to Town of Newmarket for Council for approval. I just want to draw your attention that between the 0.30% for enhancements and 1% for the infrastructure, that represents $658,000 beyond the base budget. When we look at it on an all-in basis, and this is as was previously stated at the February 23rd meeting, at that time the region was talking about a 3.79% tax increase, which after tax shifting would be 3% for the town of Newmarket. We estimated that. And we put a provision of 1% in for the school board increase, giving us an all-in tax increase of 2.79%. Later on in the presentation, I'll give you what the current numbers are. So at that time, we were looking at 2.79 all-in tax increase for the average residents in the town of Newmarket. To put it into perspective, the Consumer Price Index increase for Toronto at the end of 2014 was 2.3%. We had also put forward some suggestions for enhancements which have no net tax impact. Referred to as the funded enhancements, and that if there were any enhancements going forward at all, it would be reasonable to include those. So this is just a restatement of those enhancements. You also notice that I put a reference number beside each. This is the number of the decision package. On the infrastructure levy, this is a reprint of the page from February 23rd. I just want to point out a few things that where we're talking about the under the capital financing sustainability strategy, the Hempson recommendations, the 1.08%. If we refine processes and service levels, this is something that we are moving forward with now under the asset management plan. And the 0.83%, if we in addition implement a storm management rate, that is something that is not contemplated at this time for the 2015 budget. Previously, 2013, the 0.80% levy increase, that represented $363,773. Additional infrastructure levy in 2014, that's $358,125. Just give me a few numbers to put things into context. As I said, we included a 1% placeholder in the budget at this time. That represents $505,000. In 2014, the town of Newmarket contributed $13.9 million to the asset replacement fund, being $8.9 million from tax-supported budget and $5 million from the rate supported being the water and sewer budgets. At the end of 2014, the uncommitted balance in the asset replacement fund, so this would, the actual balance would be greater than that, because some monies have been committed but not spent. The uncommitted balance will be about $2 million. That represents $32.4 million of water and wastewater asset replacement funds and a deficit of $30.4 million on the tax-supported side. We at that time also presented some options on the enhancements, A, B, C, D, just various things. And again, you'll see the references to the decision package numbers. These were just put forward as suggestions, as options. Obviously, there could be other permutations and possibilities as well. But you will note, though, in every instance, that the total amount for that group of enhancements exceeds the allotment of $153,000 for enhancements. This shows what the net deficit, which would be by default carried over into 2016, would be. Again, the $153,000 represents the 0.3%. This is now where we stand with the updated all-in numbers. As we know, the region came in at 2.9% tax increase. After tax shifting, and looking at the trend over the last 3 years, that should represent a 2.27% increase for the average Newmarket resident. The school board is, in essence, moving forward with a 0% tax increase, but we're on the other side of tax shifting on this. Based upon the rates that they've supplied us, we're estimating that would be equivalent to a 0.83% tax increase for the average Newmarket resident. All in, a 2.46% tax increase if the town comes in at 3.5. Again, this is compared to the CPI at the end of December, which was 2.3%. Some of the considerations as far as the enhancements, what we've done is we've annualized, the budget in general, we've annualized all costs to minimize the impact on future years. An information report that was distributed on Friday projected that for 2016, we'll be looking at a tax increase somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.3 to 3.3% before adding any enhancements, reducing for any efficiency founds, any tax reductions, or the infrastructure levy. So we're not looking for a great decrease next year. So this is one of the reasons we're looking at not taking the impact from this year as much as possible into 2016. Part of the balancing act we have is in responding to the community is to maintain the base budget service levels, which means in face of growth. But we also have requests for enhanced service levels, but not an abundance of funding for that. Something to consider is use of the asset replacement fund. In 2014, the development charges update found additional DC monies which have freed on a one-time basis $1.7 million in asset replacement fund. So in essence, development charges are replacing on a one-time basis $1.7 million in asset replacement funds. So we had a infusion of funds in there. The 2015 budget as it stands now is increasing the allocation from water and wastewater to the asset replacement fund by $620,000. To keep pace with the construction price index, which is currently at 2.5%, but we used a number of 3%, we would have to increase the contribution to the asset replacement fund by at least 0.5%. So when we look at the deficiency we had on including enhancements in the budget, we had three funding options. One is we could de-annualize. We can carry forward the cost of annualization into 2016. Two, we could adjust the infrastructure levy in 2015 to maintain the tax levy at 3.5. So in essence, instead of using 1%, we could lower that amount and still maintain the total tax increase at 3.5%. Or we could maintain the infrastructure levy at 1% and increase the allocation to enhancements, which would increase the overall tax increase beyond 3.5%. And obviously, there are going to be various combinations of those. We were also presented with some options from council, from an individual on council. We measure here is E, F, and G, which make use of reducing the asset replacement fund contribution and putting in various enhancements. This is in response to what we've heard that the community wants. So in example E and F, we're reducing the asset replacement fund contribution to 0.49% of a tax increase, but there's no carry forward into 2016. In example G, again, the 0.49% for infrastructure levy, but a small carryover into 2016. Budget schedule as going forward. We're now today on March 23rd, where we're having a public meeting. On April 13th, we're hoping to come back with a draft budget proposal with some decisions made on the capital, on the operating, on the enhancements in the infrastructure levy, which would then allow us to move forward on April 20th with approval of the budget. The schedule also refers to on April 13th to pick up the remaining fees and charges. At this time, it looks like there will be no other fees and charges coming forward. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. I confess that I am the member of council who asked you to pursue some additional options. And the reason I did so was because there are two very significant components in the enhancement areas that I was hoping we would be able to find a way to be able to make some progress on each one of those major projects. One is the snow plowing for the sidewalk clearing, and the other one was the transportation and the safety items that are related under items number 29, 30, 31, and 33, as well as the sidewalk snow clearing number 48. So I appreciate you exploring those and outlining what the impact of those might be. Are there any questions from members of council? I have some questions myself, but I'll let members of council proceed. Go ahead. Okay, the business development officer position has been in the budget, Mr. Shelton, I think, what, about 3 years? Okay, and one of the things that I'd like council to give consideration to is to determine how the funding for that position has been utilized and what the recommended approach for the implementation of the added resource, and also request an outline of specific goals, timelines for implementation and outcomes projected for each of the next 5 years. We've all had the benefit of the economic development results over the last 5 years, and while I think our results relative to having lost some major employment through the Flextronics, which went to a lower cost economy, and the relocation of the police services, or the police headquarters, has had an impact on us. But my concern is that we should be, and I think we've identified economic development and marketing, Newmarket, as a priority, and that'll yet to be finalized in our strategic priorities. But what I'd like to do is to have an understanding of what the budget currently provides for in terms of the economic development officer. And then secondly, beyond that, I'd like to go forward with a further report from staff in terms of marketing Davis Drive and Newmarket and how we might fund that, because what we don't want to do is to cut the ribbon on Davis Drive and have some tired old buildings there. I think we should think now about the marketing plan, and I believe that's part of our economic development, or part of our strategic priorities. So those are two items. I'll bring those motions forward later. I'd like to hear from others. And another item that I'd like to have a look at is what the impact would be in terms of having community engagement on an annual basis. Having a community survey at the end of 4 years is kind of like checking the scoreboard after the game's over. And I think that we can have a much better impact if we find out what the community, if there's been a shift in the community attitudes, and modify some of our priorities as we go forward. So those are my general observations. So I'd like to hear from others. The asset replacement fund, I appreciate receiving the information, and I think that some relief or some reduction in the amount that we're putting into the asset replacement fund would enable us to go forward with those two very significant projects, and then we'll talk to the capital projects after that, I think. So I'll hear from members of council before I propose any thoughts in terms of requesting any motions. Councillor Sponga, and then Councillor Kerwin and Councillor Bay.
Yeah, just a couple of questions at this point. In respect to, if we were to look at other options, page 11 of your presentation, and under the column G, Mike, when you're referring to manager transportation and related traffic items, 29, 30, 31, and 33, under the column G, how would those items, are they de-annualized? Are certain items like 30, 31, and 33 coming off? How does that work?
Mr. Mason?
I just want to be clear, I understand the correction. You want to know how much, if that's a de-annualized or annualized cost?
Well, I don't, if I look at the decision package, and item 29, so the manager of transportation is 137. So you can, the items are listed on page 11 on that chart are referred to line items 29, 30, 31, and 33. But it's clear that the total of those amounts is presented in the decision package add up to a lot more than 153. So how would that work?
Okay, I understand. Sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the total amount of all those requests is $306,000. If you look on the slide there, I've got there under option 11, you see the $306,000. The de-annual, and in that option, there is no impact going forward into 2016. In column G, it's put in just at $153,000, which means the additional $153,000 is being picked up in 2016.
So that would be the annualized costs.
Correct.
Okay. And the same thing then, the other $153,000 would be covered in the same manner under item number 48. Just a little clearer.
That is correct. By coincidence, they both come in at $306,000.
Okay, thank you. That's my first question. On the other one is on the economic development position. The mayor raised a good point. Has that position has been budgeted now for a number of years, as you said earlier. So where is that? Where have those budget dollars gone in reserves? How does that work over the last 4 years? Was there gapping?
Mr. Shelton. Mr. Shelton.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we could have the commissioner speak to that, but just for the new members of council, the mayor made reference to this is a second position in economic development. It was called the BDO, the Business Development Officer, and it was struck about roughly 3 years ago. The commissioner can confirm that. We have kept that in the budget. The FTE is still in the budget, plus the dollar amounts, and we have been using those dollars in recent years to deal with some specific priorities, and perhaps the commissioner can set that out in greater detail. And that is something that could be the subject of a report that you've asked for.
Mr. McDougall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Sponga. Yeah, those funds are actually at the end of the year, whatever has not been expended has been put into a reserve, so that the funds have not been lost. So there is an economic development reserve that could be accessed for any specific project or initiative going forward. Examples of that and examples of how some of the funds that have been carried in the operating budget have been used would be to support the efforts when we pursued the post-secondary education, and we needed subject matter experts, and so we were able to engage somebody for a affordable rate but had access to funds to do so, as well as pursuing initiatives such as the Gigabit Corridor and some of the other initiatives that are ongoing in terms of creating a knowledge-based innovative community and some of the internal shifting of resources to help support some of the initiatives within economic development. so that in the absence of a FTE being hired and sitting there, we've been able to use some internal resources differently in terms of, for instance, the director of IT shifting over and doing some special project work and those sorts of things. So when we need to access some of those funds, we've had a funding source to do that.
Thank you. I find the request to you, Mr. Mayor, for a report on this item, I think it's would be very beneficial, and I will support when the time comes. I will support that request when the time comes for a motion. A thought, though, and I'm not sure how this falls within the Economic Development Commission. Over the last month or so, we've read and heard a lot of discussion around how Newmarket has been faring in terms of job creation or not. And one of the realities that we have to face as a municipality is at this point we're pretty much out of employment lands. Or when we get to it, it's going to limit the ability of attracting a certain portion of jobs or a certain portion of industry that is based on factories or industrial type of lands. And whether we like it or not, there will be a period, a lull between when we sell Davis Drive and when we actually get that 30,000 jobs in place over, I think, 2031 or 2051, whatever the target is. And those are knowledge-based jobs that are going to take place in our corridors. And a lot of that development, a lot of job creation most likely will occur outside of the municipal boundaries of the town of Newmarket. But having said that, is going to benefit, whether we like it or not, it will play a role in benefiting the economic development, the sustainability and quality of life of our residents. Whether they get to go to work, instead of working in Toronto, they get to work at the 404 in Woodbine, which is Stouffville. Do we see ourselves, through you, Mr. Mayor, or to either the CAO or the Commissioner of Economic Development, do we see ourselves taking a role in promoting economic development, not only within our own boundaries, or what our boundaries of employment lands are, but also in the immediate boundaries? And so is there a role for us to play conjunctively with the Northern Sixth municipality or the immediate municipalities around us to when it comes to economic development? And so would some of that discussion flush out in what a potential report would be, and the review that I believe is going to happen in terms of committee review with NEDAC and so forth? It's a complex question.
Mr.
I don't know
McDougall?
if we get around.
No, I understand it completely, and actually, it's thank you for the question. And it is actually something that has been discussed actually quite recently with the regional staff over the numbers that came out with their preliminary report, and we've talked about it a bit internally in terms of some of the regular regional issues meetings that we have with the mayor, regional councillor, the CAO, and the commissioners around things that impact the community, but also are impacting the region as a whole. So there has been some conversations in terms of partnership, and there is that potential, and those meetings happen around the economic development table, which all the EDOs from all 9 municipalities will attend. But perhaps the CAO can speak more to the N6 CAOs meeting that goes on, because it may be something that has been discussed there as well.
Mr. Sheldon?
Just in terms of the N6, there has been a coordination effort on economic development for a number of years, and that, as I mentioned earlier, each municipality takes on at least one initiative. So that has been spearheaded by Richard Stillville. The CEO at the time was, in a previous life, an economic development individual. So there is an active N6 economic development initiative going on, and actually branded, if you may recall, as the Northern Six. There's a brand on that. They have forums and attract realtors and so on. But your point about boundaries, things are changing significantly, where whether the employment is south of St. John Side Road or just north of Newmarket, it really, in terms of jobs, it's producing jobs for us. Our next big areas you've identified for jobs would be on the corridors, and it is essential to start that transition that we have started, moving away from the horizontal growth into that more vertical and office jobs and the high-tech jobs that we've talked about. So there are other initiatives that are underway to try to support that, and the gigabit is one of those. So, I mean, it is constantly talked about with the N6 in terms of where are we on these different initiatives and on economic development.
So in terms of this additional staffing position in economic development, do we see immediate need now because of the fact that we're moving preemptively in terms of selling and raising the interest on the corridors, but also because of the ongoing work and exploration work and cooperative initiatives with the neighboring municipalities?
If I might, my intent was that we would deal with the Davis Drive marketing plan entirely separately. That might be something where you build the plan, you look at the implementation, you look at your target market, and you wouldn't necessarily need, like I would see that as a 2, 3, maybe 4-year project. The economic or the business development officer, the economic development additional staffing that we've had in our budget, I think was always dedicated towards responding to not only growth but retention as well, and managing the CIP plan. So the intent of the marketing motion would be that it would be independent of the economic development resources that I think we need now, and that we need to be able to focus on retention and growth. This would be simply to get a marketing program, target market, and an implementation plan and specific targets over 5 years that I think we would see substantially paying for itself.
Yes. Could I?
Sure.
Just on the report, what we can do for council is, as requested, set out how we have been deploying resources in economic development through, for a component of it, incremental use of other positions in the municipality to focus on specific priorities, and then indicate what is available in that BDO budget item and that FTE, and when it may become available fully, and also to set out where the need is for the use of that position. And that would concentrate, too, on that 80-20 rule of 80% retention, 20% attraction. So there are a few things that we've talked about, the Commissioner and the EDO and I and others, and that is on the visitation program, a few things like that. Davis Drive it needs attraction. It also needs retention and rebuilding. So, there might be some overlap, but they can be kept so that they are virtually separate exercises as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerwin?
I'll reserve my thoughts to Davis Drive later when we come to that discussion, and also the Economic Development Officer I'll reserve when we discuss strategic priorities. I have different thoughts, and some articulated here today, but I'll elaborate down the road. But the one I want to look at is sidewalk snow clearing. It's been an ongoing issue ever since I've been on council. We plow about 60% of our sidewalks, and 40% we don't, and other areas don't have sidewalks. But basically, and I've got the research, there really has been no conviction that I know of, unless someone can prove it to me, of someone failing to clear their sidewalk. Somehow we just allow it to go winter after winter after winter. But during the election, Tom talks about priorities. One was sidewalk snow clearing. More and more of our residents go to Arizona or they go to Florida during the winter. And therefore their house is vacant. As their house is vacant, they don't shovel the snow on the sidewalk. And we have more and more people in walkers and carts and strollers and everything else who want to use the sidewalks. And they can't because the sidewalk isn't plowed. The town does an exemplary job of sidewalk clearing. So I propose, eventually when we come to it, of phasing in full sidewalk snow clearing throughout the town. And you can phase it in this year and next year, 2016, 2017, or 2015, 16, 16, 17. And we reduce the contribution to the ARF. It's an issue that's just ongoing, and it gets progressively worse. We just, you save on bylaw enforcement. You don't have to send your bylaw officers out there to remind people to shovel their snow. So you're reducing the amount of time that we use our bylaw enforcement officers into an issue we've never solved. People don't shovel their snow, particularly if they're on a corner. I can give you examples where that is, where Birchwood or Ferndale and so forth. That's the areas that I know. So it eliminates just a controversial issue and an issue that people are fed up with, quite frankly. So I believe we should shovel all sidewalks. There's no discrimination. It's just like the post office. At one time, I get mail delivery, but you don't because you're in a new subdivision. So the post office has said, okay, no one's going to get mail delivery. They're going to get super boxes. Well, here, we're discriminating against the 40% because we don't help them out. Why should I have to shovel my sidewalk when you don't have to shovel your sidewalk? I pay the same taxes as you do. So it creates a level playing field. And I suggest we phase it in over 2 years. But that's the item I wanted to speak on, Mr. Mayor. Whether we do that or not, it's just an issue that I want resolved because we don't enforce shoveling of sidewalks.
Thank you. Councillor Vey.
Thank you very much. When we come to the recommendations, I will be adding one recommendation, and hopefully it'll be something that we can all support because it's not going to cost us a lot. However, I was going to speak on the sidewalk snow clearing. Councillor Kerwin has said everything I want to say. It is getting worse. We have, particularly in people either going north and not paying for that service, and it becomes a real problem. We have more and more rental homes. At least certainly I have that in my ward, and some of these homes are vacant. They're not cleared. Some of these homes, a tenant says, well, the landlord's supposed to do it, and landlord wants the tenant to do it, and then we don't enforce it. So I'd like to go ahead with the sidewalk snow clearing too. I do have a question, though, just so I understand it. When I'm looking at the options F and G, are we looking at, is it presented this way because we want to phase in over 2 years, or is it presented this way because we think half the costs will be 2015, November, December when we get snow, and that carries us to that, and then we have to revisit it again the next year for the next year's half cost, January, February, hopefully not March. So I just want to get a little clarity as to what the difference between F and G is, what the model is there.
Mr. Sheldon?
If I could, Mr. Mayor, just to differentiate between the three of them, and on F and G in particular. So on F, the main focus there is to provide a program that would clear all of the sidewalks. And I think the sidewalk number, if you look at a previous page, is 300,000.
Right.
If you look at E, if I could speak to it, the focus there is more on the traffic part, and you couldn't afford the sidewalk snow clearing unless you get into a carryover into the next year. So then if you look at G attempts to recognize that you're mid-year by the time you get anything going. You wouldn't need the full budget amount, and you would be able to start to implement both of them. However, you'd have to acknowledge that there's about a $306,000 item that you'd be starting with in the next year.
You mean January 1st, we can't just stop cleaning sidewalks?
No. Now, one thing that can assist is Public Works has identified that the winter for 2015, so the smaller part from, say, November to the end of the year is about 90,000 or somewhere in that order. So this still splits the budget rate in half. You can also do, carry the funds you don't use into the next year and try to mitigate that over a little bit even more than 2 years. So that's the difference between the three. One, the primary item E focuses on transportation and traffic, which is always high on the public's radar. F focuses on the sidewalk snow clearing. All three of them do the court and elbows clearing. And G attempts to get both of those going starting about mid-year, but with the carryover into the next year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Sponga?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch and maybe underscore some of the important discussion around the sidewalk plowing. I was just trying to find an email that I recently circulated to members of council. It was a bit of an exercise with the support of our legal department in trying to understand what our responsibilities, what the responsibility of the residents really are around sidewalk plowing. And unfortunately, I can't find a specific correspondence at the moment. But it basically, there's a number of Ontario Supreme Court decisions that have exonerated property owners from the responsibility or liability around sidewalk clearing. Having said that, the bylaw still remains enforceable in terms of the town requesting residents to shovel their sidewalks, but the liability of a sidewalk that is not cleared of ice does not rest with the residents. It's been tested through the courts. It does rest with the municipality as the rightful owner of those sidewalks. So if we could take that into context and the fact that we have an aging population and that we're seeing an increase of people, a decrease of people that are physically able to actually go out there and clear their sidewalks, I think that it behooves us to start looking at this seriously and trying to provide that program townwide. So at the time, I just want to voice my support for this, and I think the deannualization of that item is a good option. And of course, I think we've all heard it loud and clear, and we hear it every day, that issues related to traffic and transportation management are very important to the residents of Newmarket. So for myself, again, it's important that we send that message back to the residents that we heard those voices loud and clear, and they were moving forward. So the deannualization of that item, I think, is important as well. So I look forward to how the motions are structured, but I think at this point I tend to support that we move forward on both items. Whether we lower the contribution to the ARF or deannualize the items, I think I wasn't aware of the item that the CEO just mentioned. If the winter maintenance cost for the latter part of 2015 are considerably lower than 306, then that carryover would there would be a carryover associated that would mitigate that impact of deannualization next year. So I tend to support those options, but I look forward to further conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Broom-Plumley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A common theme that I hear from residents is both safety and accessibility. Meeting the ever-changing needs of our community needs to be top of mind, and providing solutions needs to be a priority. Both items, the snow removal and the manager of transportation and related traffic items, I am in support of. I think it's important that we understand that these two things are what we're hearing, and we need to provide immediate solutions to the residents in both of these areas. I'd also like to, for the public, let them understand that by going forward with transportation, it will include stronger education programs on traffic safety. It will give them the ability to meet the requests of councillors, residents, and community groups in a more timely fashion. It'll also give us the ability to participate actively on community government working groups like Road Watch, YRP, York Region Transportation, and I hope in the future will lead to a committee, townwide traffic safety committee, advisory committee as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bazans?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. One of the things I'm particularly curious about is what response we've had to the public consultation process, because you know, we've gone through a lot of effort to make sure that the public has had an opportunity to itemize some of their priorities. I know that I, as well as some other councillors, had received a couple of emails from people who felt that there wasn't enough emphasis on the road safety issue to truly get out from the public that that should be a priority above all else. And so I'd just be interested to see the order of magnitude that we have been hearing from the residents on some of these issues. I think that would be quite helpful to me in putting some kind of order and sense on the priorities.
Mr. Sheldon?
Would be three things at least three things that would inform that discussion. We're just getting our Director of Communications on the one. So the consultation process on the budget, that's one of them, and there was a report in the last budget meeting. We can get Wanda to speak to that. The other one is the community survey that was done last June roughly, and more specifically in rec fees in the fall. And then also the third one is the knocking on doors during the election as well. So I think we could get the first part of that from Wanda, and the second part, there was a report too on the community survey. So if we can't give that to you right now, we could compile that information and cover those first two components. And I guess, sorry, if I could add, also from our own customer service center, we do keep really accurate records of the various phone calls we get and counter inquiries and so on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's really helpful. I'm certainly aware of the previous reports, but given that we have been, just in the last while, been going out to the public and really trying to get that input, I'm just quite curious to see what we've been hearing, because it's a little different when you're going around to the doors and perhaps a little different when you're going out in June for public input versus when you've just come through a winter and people, so just to get a sense of order of magnitude and importance would be helpful.
Sure.
Okay.
Through Mr. Mayor, what we've been hearing is maintain services, and that's basically lines up with what we've heard in the past few surveys. We were about, I think, what were numbers? Just over 200 for our survey for the budget, and that's basically what we're hearing is to maintain current services across the board, and that was including in the roads and sidewalks area, but we didn't drill down specifically for that question if we're specifically talking to that piece, but thank you. Yeah. So our last presentation, plus minus, I think that, the biggest difference was 99.2% when you averaged out the to increase or decrease taxes. And like I said, that's consistent with our community survey, which is statistically correct. And hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if you're looking for a bit more, but I'd be happy to elaborate.
I'm wondering if, does customer service keep e-tickets on traffic issues? I wonder if we could get an update on that, maybe circulate it as an information report to help provide some of that information. Mr. McDougall? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. McDougall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we can certainly provide an information report that covers off all of the measurements around traffic management, traffic issues that have been reported. So, yeah, we can provide that.
Okay. My question is with the 153,000 that's being proposed under item number G, would that get us substantially underway? Where's our director? Would that get us substantially underway where we could see some meaningful progress in terms of addressing some of the issues that are raised as far as traffic safety goes?
Mr. Mayor, yes, certainly it would get us going very well, because by the time we have the approval for it and advertise for the position and interview, it will probably be into the fall when we get somebody for the position. And the balance of the money can be used to start implementing some traffic calming pilot projects, some education programs, and certainly we can get a good chunk done this year if we do have a portion of the money.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? I do have a couple of questions from Mr. Mays. With respect to the asset replacement fund, and it's been a priority for the municipality, there's an indication that $620,000 or 1.23% of DC funding is going to be covering debt servicing relative to the operations center, and that was previously being taken out of the ARF. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, there is the 2014 DC background study provides for $620,000 for debt servicing. Sorry, not 620. It's approximately $500,000 in debt servicing towards the op center, which is currently be funded from water and wastewater rates.
Okay.
The additional 1.7 million I refer to as one time, where we've designated some capital projects to be funded from asset replacement fund. And since then, it's now those projects are eligible for DC funding.
That isn't uncomplicated for me, Mike. So there's the DC funding, is that providing a $620,000 every year, or was that a one-time contribution?
The DC funding is providing $500,000 in very rough numbers. I can get you the exact numbers. It's not quite 620, but 500,000 on an annual basis towards. Yeah, it's on an annual basis, and in addition, there's a one-time influx of 1.7 million.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So and then there's so that surface is under the water rates, so that's what you're saying, as opposed to
yes,
the general
under the
tax
water
rate.
wastewater rates.
But it does feed the ARF.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. Okay. And then there's this proposal for $620,000 for the enhanced condition assessment program. Is that a one-time deal, or is that
that's an annual
expenditure
program.
that's going to be an annual program?
It's an annual program.
Okay. And could that program be modified? Is it an all-in budget, or is it possible, for example, to have a $325,000 condition assessment program?
I would defer
possible?
to the acting commissioner for that one.
Mr. Kawamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that price tag, that $620,000, is assuming that we would be able to video through an 8-year program, and then it would actually dip down to just under $100,000 for the second 8-year period. But what we could do is expand that 8-year to 16-year to cut that in half. Obviously, it doesn't give us as much information as quickly as we hope, but that could be done pending council approval.
Okay, and the average life of the pipes? I'm just trying to get some scope in terms of a deferral of stretching the program from 8 to 16 years.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, the average lifetime of a pipe is approximately 50 to 75 years, depending on the what it's made out of. However, within that CCTVing, we'd also be looking at all the other connections of those pipes too.
Okay, and so we would be able to, or we would have a prioritization in terms of the infrastructure that we'd inspect first?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we can, and also there may be some other opportunities to cooperate with developers to also lower that dollar figure.
Okay, is this the I&I we're talking about, Bob?
Yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the I&I is being done through the region. So again, with a partnership from the region and potential partnerships with the developers, we may be able to reduce that number or shrink the time frame of that project.
Okay, and the reason for the questions was to get an understanding as to whether or not there was some flexibility and the degree of risk if we modified some of those programs. That was what I was trying to get an understanding of. Okay, thank you for the asset replacement fund. On the library, I see that the library has indicated that the $19.2 thousand is the cost of year-round Sunday service, and I was wondering, is that a fully annualized cost, or was that a de-annualized cost? Is that? Do we know? And, Mr. Mays?
Understanding that is to bring up the current program to an annualized cost. It's just the incremental costs. I guess they'd be spreading their staff around a little more, but there would be some additional staff costs. There'd be some minor changes in the utility costs.
I see that's being funded from a reserve in 2015, and is that sustainable?
The Library Board has recommended funding that from the Library Reserve. The Library Reserve has sufficient balance in that to fund that for a number of years.
A number of years? Okay.
You want the number?
No, just...
They have a few $100,000 in that reserve.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay. So, Councillor Sponga, any further questions?
No, I was actually going to ask the same question on the library. Sometimes you did. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Oh, yes. Can you tell us, we're looking at the infrastructure tax here. Can you tell us what the fire JCC has landed on in terms of increased percentage?
So the question is, does this presentation include what the JCC recommendations?
The numbers in this presentation align with the JCC recommendation.
And what is that?
JCC has not requested an increase in their asset replacement fund. The Central York Fire Services asset replacement fund was reviewed a couple of years back, and the last few years they've made increases to bring it up in line with their 10-year projection on capital.
Okay, so if I was to look at these numbers right now in terms of tax increase related to to Central York Fire, what is that?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear
If
you.
I was to look at these numbers in terms of when you have the slide that you break down the percentages and you break out the 1% for infrastructure tax, if I wanted to break out fire, what would that number be?
We're not recommending an increase. That 1% you're seeing for infrastructure levy is an additional levy. We are currently levying almost $14 million in asset replacement fund on an annual basis. That 1% is an increase to that. There is no recommendation at this time to increase the levy for Central York Fire Service, which I believe is approximately $800,000 now.
Okay. So if I was to look at, in terms of the library, the base cost of Central York Fire, and I was to look at the increases for the 2015 budget of Central York Fire, what is that increase in percentage? You're saying there is none?
The increase for Central York Fire?
Yeah.
I think that was just distributed this morning.
In terms of tax or?
Right, in terms of tax percentage.
My slides out over here.
I think
that was 1.06%.
Okay, thank you. 0.06%. Thank you. That's all I want.
Okay, so it would be appropriate if there's no further questions to receive the presentation. Councillor Kerwin, Councillor Vague, all those in favor? And that is carried. We are looking, the next item is report number 2015-20. We're seeking some direction in terms of what we should go forward in as presenting our draft budget for public consultation. I'll entertain some motions. I would hope that after this discussion that we might see ourselves going forward with option number G, but I'll hear motions. Councillor Vey?
You referred to option number 2. By that you mean?
G, item G, which is on page 123.
Okay, that's what I thought you were referring to. Actually,
that's the splitting and phasing of the two major projects.
That's right. Yeah, 153 for each.
Yep.
Yes. Actually, that was going to be my recommendation that we go forward with item G. It looks balanced. It's addressing needs that the community have expressed to us loud and clear for a number of years now, particularly in the areas of sidewalk snow clearing and in the area of traffic management and traffic mitigation on our residential streets. So I'd like to move that. I'd also like to add one other item to our recommendations. I just need to get some clarification first. My understanding from looking at our chart with development charges, we do have dollars from our development charges put aside and they're available for basically a splash pad construction. I believe that's correct? Mm-hmm. That's correct. So what I would like to do is basically move splash pads forward from our deferred list, and because we have development dollars available, bring them forward for our 2015 capital budget, focusing on the development charges, understanding full well we also put aside, I believe, 10% for operating. Is that correct?
Mr. Sheldon.
So to make sure I'm accurate in what I'm saying.
Yes, yes. If the direction is to include that item in the 2015 budget, capital budget, what we would do is come back with revised capital budget that would add that to it,
right?
And we would identify where the operating funds would come from, and that would be coming from a reserve.
Oh, all right. So we're really looking at no impact on the actual tax rate because the dollars are coming from our development charge.
That's correct, and reserve.
And reserve, sorry, excuse me. So I'd like to make that our third recommendation. If you can capture the words, that the splash pads we move forward from the deferred list to the 2015 capital budget using available development charges.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Sponga? Okay. Councillor Vig, do you wish to speak to that as the mover?
I think I did.
Okay, Councillor Sponga is the seconder.
Yeah, the seconder, but I also wanted some clarification. My understanding is the first recommendation is that council directs staff to move forward with option G, as outlined in the enhancements option. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. Yes.
Yes. And I'm sorry, what was the second one?
The other one that I brought forward was that dollars are available in our development charges for splash pads, and will have no impact on our tax rate. So I've asked that the splash pads be moved forward from our deferred list to the 2015 capital budget relying on the development charges dollars available.
I just wanted to make sure that
and reserves, excuse me, and reserves particularly for the operating. I think it was.
I just wanted to make sure that there were two recommendations, not three. Okay. Yeah, I'll second that. Again, Mr. Mayor, as I said, I believe that we've seen in our community survey, we heard it at the door, we see what the correspondence is on a regular basis, and the feedback and concerns that we get through customer service and directly through our executive offices, that traffic remains one of the top priorities of this municipality in terms of trying to address the traffic issues around our municipality is still one of the top priorities for our residents. As I said, I think the snow clearance of sidewalks, it's very important. In the past, I've always referred when we spoke about new sidewalk installation in the name of accessibility, that if we did so, we also had to be prepared to make those sidewalks accessible all year round. And so I believe that with the motion that is in front of us, we're starting to address that. And of course, being a big advocate of splash pads for the last 12 years, I think they provide a great economic tool and entertainment and facility for families to use. If you were to go to our outdoor pool right now, a mom with 2 kids is paying in excess of $11 where you can access a splash pad for free. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I look forward in supporting the motion, well, seconding, and I will be supporting the motion in front of us.
So those are the recommendations with respect to Report 2015-20. Councillor Carwin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Splash pads, once again, can be used universally. The success of the one in Ward 4 up on Rogers Park is an indicator. And parents can bring their kids, whether they want to go to Rogers Park or whether they want to go to the one over here, really doesn't matter. It's open to all people, no matter where they live. And you have one on the east side of town, now you have one on the west side of town. Or one on the west side of town, now you go over to the east side of town. And I can support all three. With regard to the splash pads, in the summertime, we saw how widely they're used. the same way that we did with when we put the Peter Gorman pool in or we put the Riverwalk Commons in. These are free. And during the summertime, the Riverwalk Commons is crowded, in the wintertime it's crowded. Well, we're just augmenting what we already did in the summertime.
Thank you. Any further comments? All those in favor? None opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. Before we adjourn, there were two other items that I made reference to. That's with respect to, I'd ask for a motion that staff provide a report within, say, 120 days on how the funding for the position of the Business Development Officer has been utilized and the recommended approach for implementation of the added resource or realignment of the resources, I guess is the appropriate one, and that we receive a specific outline of goals, timelines for implementations, and outcomes projected over the next 5 years. Would ask for someone to provide that motion. Councillor Sponga, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Fay. Any further discussion? And again, as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Mays.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you also mentioned something about the community survey.
Yes, I was going to do each one separately. Okay, that's all right. Good. Any further discussion on that? It's just a matter of finding out the information and how are we going to maximize that resource. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, the other item, and thank you for reminding me, is that the staff provide a report outlining estimating the costs of increasing the frequency of the community survey to annually for the years 2015 and 18. Mr. Shelton.
Mr. Mayor, would it be acceptable for us to address that specifically, but also set out if there are any other options?
No, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be good. Great suggestion. If somebody will move and second it. Councillor Bazance, anybody wish to second that? Councillor Sponga. All those in favor? And that is carried. Third item then that I'd like us to have a look at, and that is with respect to the Davis Drive, and recognizing that we are virtually running out of land, that we should specifically target some economic development opportunities. I'd like us to at least discover what it would take and how we would fund a special project or a very focused project that would have a staff report within 90 days outlining the resources, related costs, and sources of funding available to implement a targeted marketing program to advance the redevelopment of Davis Drive properties for implementation by Q4 2015, and that this report include how this could be accomplished without impacting the current and proposed economic development plans and initiatives underway. So the intent would be, what will it take for us to advance the redevelopment of Davis Drive, knowing that Davis Drive is going to be finished. Davis Drive is going to be finished in 283 days, 7 hours and 34 minutes. So we've got that amount of time to get a marketing plan together. Councillor Kerwin?
Yeah, on excuse me, Mr. Mayor. On this one, Mr. Mayor, I'm hesitant, and I'll tell you why. First of all, once the transit is up and running and the traffic is flowing, then I can vote on something like this. Unfortunately, I believe that Davis Drive is in a long haul for redevelopment because of the flow of traffic. Because you can only go east or you can go west, and it's not where people are going to shop. You're going to have to look at an alternative. People are not going to go west and then have to turn and come back and go east to do their shopping. So I'm hesitant on this one, and I won't be supporting it. I want to see the transit up and running. I want to see reports on how many people are using that transit service, how many are riding the bus from Yonge Street to Roxborough. That's all it really goes to. And then the flow of traffic. And I think that's really important before I make any decision on Davis Drive. I have great reserves. I think we're going to have a problem. That's
I guess
my-
I'm not in a position to discuss it until I get a mover and a seconder, I guess, yeah. Yep, no, that's.
Discussion, but I want to see that transit service finished. I want to see the number of people who are riding the bus. I want to see the details on it, and I want to see the flow of traffic, and I want to see why people won't shop on Davis Drive. I think we've created an area where we're going to have difficulty. And I think that's been evident since we started the construction on Davis Drive.
And then, again.
And I've never been in favor of the reconstruction of Yonge Street. I think it's financially.
I understand that,
It's a
Councillor, but
disaster.
It doesn't have a mover or a seconder yet, and so it may not survive. Okay, I do have a mover. And again, do I have a seconder for the motion? And that is to, okay. Okay, good. I'll let the mover and the seconder speak to that. Councillor Spalding.
I can understand some of the reservations and concerns that Councillor Kerwin has. But having said that, I think if I was to try to bring this into context, in a smaller context, it's like some of the discussion around my house about doing work to the bathrooms and so forth and renovating the house with the intention of upgrading it so that I can then sell it and maximize my returns on it. I think that regardless of what the traffic patterns will be on Davis Drive or on Yonge Street, I think as we have a discussion earlier around the economic development position, I think, and we said about 80% retention, 20% attraction, I think that this has a great opportunity at this time, the motion in front of us, to ensure that those who have struggled through the construction now have an opportunity to see a marketing plan in place to actually bring more development, to bring more people to live, to bring more businesses on that street and sustain and retain the businesses that have been able to survive through the construction. So I think it's a great first step in terms of retention as well. The other thing is, regardless, again, of what the traffic patterns or what or even if we were to look at a negative impact on Davis Drive, I think we have to, even more so reason, to go out there and attract some redevelopment and attract some business activity and create, again, that very vibrant atmosphere and very vibrant potential that Davis Drive has. In terms of the timing, I think this is a great time because there's a number of stakeholders right now on Davis Drive. I think that I would, through the motion, I would also suggest through direction of staff that we engage Metrolinx in terms of moving forward and see what if there's any opportunities there to sell their story as well in conjunction with our development, redevelopment ready story. And I think there's an opportunity to engage some of the property owners, the people that are making investments on the Main Street, looking forward to what potentially can occur and how they can best, what the highest and best use of those lands will be. So I think in terms of timing, it's great timing because we are dealing with people that are looking at Davis Drive in terms of investments. We have Metrolinx engaged right now on the ground. So for all intent and purposes, and we have businesses that have survived the construction. And I think those businesses will look forward to a marketing plan that brings investments and brings jobs and brings development to Davis Drive again. So for all of those reasons, as simplistic as they may seem, I think this is a great idea and I will support it wholly.
Thank you. Councillor Vitt.
Thank you very much. I also think the timing, this is the right timing for that. I want to stress we're not approving doing anything. We're just getting some information for that right now. And Councillor Kerwin may be correct that Davis Drive may transform, that it won't have all retail anymore. It might be professional office buildings, et cetera, other types of development, all the type of development that would support the existing retail, support the existing services, restaurants, et cetera, and then see it transform. So I think there'll be a lot benefit. He may be correct that it's not going to be a retail strip as it has been in the past. It will change, but that's to be expected too. We also have the hospital there, an opportunity to leverage, quite frankly, their operating budget, their buying power, and businesses that wish to sell goods and services in the health sector. It's a wonderful partnership opportunity there too. So I think this is the time to look at Davis Drive, speak to the businesses there on Davis Drive, talking about what plans we have going forward. We're not going to be passive about this. We're actually going to be going out and marketing it in a strategic way, and I think the businesses there will be quite pleased. Any plan we have going forward for Davis Drive really is a long-term plan. It's not we're going to do something and then just walk away from it after 8 months. So the information that Councillor Kerwin is looking for, particularly ridership with Visa, how Davis Drive is going to function as a road, etc., that will form part of the data that we are gathering, because we are looking for a long-range plan. I don't think this is just a one-shot deal. We do want to develop Davis Drive. We want it to be prosperous. We know it's going to be beautiful, and we want it to be prosperous also.
Thank you. Any further discussion? And again, I support it because I think now is the opportune time so that we have a good plan in place, or at least understand what it takes to have a good plan in place before we finish the construction and we'd be in a position to move forward. So waiting until construction itself is done, I think probably we'd have a lull there or a downtime that wouldn't be beneficial. I think we can capture a lot of momentum as we start finishing and as we start having some of the openings and as people see how that will function. So I appreciate you bringing the motion forward. All those in favor? Opposed? It carries. Okay, I think that deals with most of the items with the exception of Mr. Shelton.
Just one final point, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the question that was asked about more recent information relative to snow complaints and that on sidewalks, what we will do is get that information from our customer service center. We have taken a quick look at the survey. There is data on it, but it's not reflective of the, this harsh winter that we've had. So we will send out information to members of council in that regard.
Okay. Reports by regional representatives. Okay. Any notices of motion? None. Any motions? New business.
On Monday, March 29th, begins an OMB hearing in Kane Room A and B. We have a priority meeting at the Ops Center that morning, and I just wanted to let my colleagues know where I'll be. I'll be, as it affects the residents of Mulock Court and LeGresley and Ainsworth and Bondi and so forth, I'll be there with my residents, Mr. Mayor, on Monday, March the 29th. But I will be there for site plan and for council.
Okay. And you're certainly welcome to share your views with us as we go into that session. So thank you very much. The other item is with respect to new business. Oh, Councillor Sponga.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure. I'll probably be asking for an information report, or maybe we can have some discussion about bringing this back on a future agenda. Council just in 2013 reviewed the zoning bylaw as it pertained to certain areas of the old core of the downtown area, and I believe it also extended into areas of Ward 2. And it looked at putting in place some amendments to the bylaws and exceptions to restrict or control, if anything, overbuild, and to ensure that any infill development was sympathetic with the buildings and the structures in the immediate neighborhood. What we're starting to see is, again, just this week, last week at a Committee of Adjustment hearing, that the recommended direction of council to keep lot coverage at 25% and heights at 8.5 meters measured in a certain way now that it's been amended, under the bylaw amendment 2013-30 and the exclusion 119, that through the decision of committee of the whole, we're now looking at, again, we're up to 30% lot coverage closely. Committee of Adjustment, I'm sorry. And the heights are creeping up. My concern is that if there's a couple of, in each application, and I understand it well, and by no means is this a comment in regards to our planning staff or our planning reports, but my concern is around the fact that if these applications get to Committee of Adjustment and Committee of Adjustment supports the variance, eventually there have been enough variances approved that the norm now is completely changed in the immediate neighborhood, hence defeating the amendments that were made to the bylaw to begin with. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I see the Director of Planning is here. Rick, I'm sorry if I'm going to want to engage you in this one, but how do we avoid this variance creep, and if that's what we can call it, and ensure that the decision of council and amendments are made to the bylaw and exceptions are made to the bylaws so that we can maintain that uniform type of traditional build form in those specific areas isn't jeopardized.
Mr. Nethery.
You know I was going to ask you this today.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess it's worth noting, though, that it was one application, and it was one application for a relatively modest modification to the height and to the coverage. And as you know, each of these applications have to be dealt with on their own merits, and staff have evaluated that particular application and came to that conclusion that that one was okay. The next one may not be. There's not much you can do to prevent someone from making an application to the Committee of Adjustment, and we stand behind the merits and the philosophy behind that bylaw. But the notion of what a minor variance is about is to always evaluate the specific circumstances that are present on a particular property, because it might give rise to the need for some minor variance from those requirements. So I don't know that I take it as a precedent. I do take your point about, as you get a whole neighborhood that changes, then that becomes the new norm. But I'm not sure that's what we're seeing at this point in time.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, again on this, on the same item, I've received correspondence today by a number of neighboring residents to the specific application that was made for a minor variance for, I believe it was 253 Avenue Road, that they seek to appeal that decision. And I would believe that they will be appealing that decision at the Ontario Municipal Board, and then coming to this council asking for this council to support the intent of the bylaw that as it was amended under 2013-30, and support their appeal at the OMB. How do we deal with that? I mean, it's becoming we're going to see this over and over again as we deal with infill. Should council further restrict the amendment to further restrict the percentage of lot coverage and height, or is there other measures in place that we can avoid this merry-go-round of where somebody makes a minor variance application, they get approval, and then we find the residents in front of council basically asking us to support our own amendments and our own bylaws.
Mr. Nethery?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess in the first instance, certainly if residents appeal that decision, then our solicitor would be bringing forward probably an in-camera report to this committee to seek direction as to what role, if any, the council would play, and whether or not it wanted to hire outside consultants or outside planners to represent a perspective that might have been different from your planning departments. That said, I think it's worth noting that there was a considerable amount of consultation that went through the development of that bylaw over the better part of a year. And there was an awful lot of research that was done to look at best practices and what kinds of requirements were in place, not only here but in other jurisdictions. So I think council worked pretty hard to come up with a reasonable set of requirements. So I don't know that I would advocate for you to be revisiting that and changing those requirements. I think they're quite supportable. But I think at the same time, though, we mustn't forget that individual property owners do have that right to make an application, and that each one of those minor variance applications will be evaluated by planning staff and be subject to any other comments that the community can make. And it's not simply the case that you would expect that planning staff will always approve them. But in this case, there was an examination done, and the staff came to the conclusion that they did, and the committee adopted that recommendation. It won't always necessarily be so.
Are the homes, my last final question and comment, if there's been more than one minor variance application within the catchment area that is looked at in terms of assessing the validity of that minor variance, are the projects that are there as a result of favorable minor variance applications, are they considered as part of that analysis, or are they isolated out because of the fact that they went through a separate appeal process?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're still going to be governing ourselves against the bylaw that's in place. And we will be evaluating them on the basis of whatever merit may or may not be associated with that plan. That said, I think we saw one last year or the year before perhaps, which went to the OMB, and the board ruled in favor of the approval of that one because they were looking very specifically at, I think it was literally the two on either side or something in that nature. So in that instance, the board did look at the immediate geography of what was happening and what those requirements were. It's a little perhaps different on the one we're talking about here because it's out by itself.
So, sorry, Mr. Mayor, you just raised a very good point. So if the board is looking, is using these minor variances as not necessarily the decision, but the finished product as a precedent-setting case, the fact that these larger homes have been erected in the last couple of years, hence this application should be supported at an OMB specific to the case of Park Avenue. How do we preemptively ensure, or do we keep that frame of mind, do we keep that decision as part of when we look at these applications of minor variance and we assess whether that is actually a minor variance or whether that minor variance is going to be a major variance to the whole neighborhood?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in the case of the one on Park Avenue, the board, and remember, these individual OMB hearings are held by individual members of the board, and from one to another, they might have different perspectives on the same evidence that's placed before them. The member that we happened to have that day did take notice of what was on either side and drew the conclusion that you're aware of. It wasn't a conclusion that your staff or would have been contemplated by the bylaw. In other cases, though, the same facts before a different member might have gone in a different way. So I think it's important to note that they don't, and I don't know that I said that they act as by way of a precedent. They actually look at the facts, or they should be looking at the facts unique to each individual one. They're called hearing de novo, which means that they're there based on whatever evidence is placed before them today.
I will conclude with this, Mr. Mayor, with a comment that I'm looking forward, I guess, to no OMB reform, because it sounds like that is the root of the problem to a certain extent. But I will also caution staff that we will see more and more of these minor variances as the older part of town now has become very attractive for people who see the downtown area as potentially the Forest Hill of Newmarket, where people are making considerable investments in buying properties for the sole purpose of demolishing and building their dream home. And so I think that we will be faced with this reality in these applications for minor variance more often than I'd like to, but it'll be the reality going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Challenge with with infill challenges and compatibility. Councillor Kerwin?
Just a comment. It's not just, it's all across town. It's in every ward where there's infill or minor variances. But the bottom line is the Committee of Adjustment is an arm's length board of the town. And it was created by the town years ago. And we appoint the members to that board. And you're, in fact, there's a committee, you and I think Jane Twining, who's the other member on that
Councillor
board?
Bazance.
Christina
Meet
Bazance.
shortly.
So the crucial thing is, when you're appointing people, you have to appoint very, very knowledgeable people. And I must say the Committee of Adjustment that we have had is composed of very knowledgeable people who have held very responsible jobs in communities throughout Ontario. And I go regularly to Committee of Adjustment just to learn. So it's an arm's length from us, and we have to be very careful in what we do, Mr. Mayor. And I really appreciate the Director of Planning, his comments today, because I listen to them. I go to these meetings, they make a decision, they make intelligent decisions, and if the residents want to appeal that, then it's their decision to appeal. But I don't want to be committing town resources to fight battles across the town when we created this Committee of Adjustment years ago, and it's an arm's length committee, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kerwin. Under new business, I would ask for another motion, and that is that council grant pre-budget approval for up to $1,000 in support of the annual garage sale and event, and as well as the Ian Gray Award for staff to coordinate with the community volunteers. And the reason I'm asking for that motion is that we are still in the process of reviewing NEDAC, but those members of the, or EAC, yeah, we're still in the process of reviewing committees, but EAC has some activities that they've been committed to on an annual basis. So that direction I'd like to be able to provide, so they can still go forward to it until we finalize our approach to that.
They've already been getting that every year, Mr. Mayor.
They have, but in the absence.
I can move that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Sure, I'll move that.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
Okay, Councillor Broom Plumley then. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There's no need for a closed session. And I think that concludes the discussions. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Sponga, Councillor Bazance, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Great work today.